How about this one? All right, so audio input capture. Will, go ahead and say something.
Hello, I'm Will.
Okay, there we go. So this one works for reasons unknown to anybody, and I'm just going to trust the process here. So we're live with Will, this FNGM on YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok, I believe. And what's your Etsy
Yeah,
store?
I have, this F and GM Games is my handle on Etsy. So, uh, Etsy.com/this F and GM Games. I don't know. I never actually look at the URL.
That's totally fine. So, we are here today to do another discussion dungeon. This is a format I came up with about half an hour before my interview with John McGowan, who wrote the grant something about the Grand Campaign. I have like terrible aphasia right now, but I'm going to get over it, I promise. At least partway through the process of this interview. But today we're talking to this FNGM. I'm really bad at introductions, so I'm going to put you on the spot here because we've known each other for a really long time, but this is our first time speaking on video.
I know we met through Fiddleback's Discord, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think we met there basically through Fiddleback, and I want to say I joined that Discord on account of I don't think it was GM Word of the Week. I joined it because of Digressions and Dragons.
Yes, so did I. No, yeah, no, yeah. That's exactly how I got my introduction to both of those guys, really. So, I'll introduce myself then. My name is William Tramp, also known as this F and GM. As was already mentioned, I have a Twitter, Patreon, YouTube, TikTok. I'm all over the place. I'm kind of a hot mess when it comes to the what exactly I'm doing in the space. But yeah, I've been a gamer for 20 years or so, or 25 years. How old am I? No, longer than that. 26 years. I don't know. That doesn't matter. The point is I'm just excited to be here. So thank you for having me on today.
Absolutely. So, how did you get into the tabletop RPG space? Like, what's your gaming history? I guess.
Oh man, it's a it's kind of a weird story. I got into gaming because of spite. Pure, unadulterated spite. So, a friend of mine in middle school had invited me over to play Dungeons and Dragons. Over at the friendly local game store with Tabletop Games and Hobby, I believe, here in Kansas City. Hey, represent. Anyway, so I was in middle school. He invites me to play. I'd never played the game before, never heard of it. I sat down. He gave me character, and I I didn't understand the idea of a tabletop role playing game. So I start. We The first thing he does is he introduces us to an ogre, and in my mind I know like a couple of fantasy movies. So I'm like, ogres, bad guys. I have magic. Shoot the magic at the ogre. Instead of
Okay.
having a conversation, right? So, uh, so I throw a magic missile at this ogre who has like 100 hit points, and I don't understand that. So I shoot like 3 points of damage. The ogre comes and smashes me first hit, first round of combat. I'm dead. And my friend did not have a backup character for me, and the other friends laughed. So that I went and sat in a chair to wait for my mom to come pick me up 2 hours later. Which and I spent all that time in the chair just thinking this was the worst experience I've ever had in my short life by this point. And I never, ever want somebody else to have that experience again. So the next day, I went to the bookstore and bought all of the Dungeons and Dragons books that they had with my allowance. And then I immediately set forth on the path to becoming a lifelong game master. So purely because I was mad at that guy's style. Oh yeah, well I do play now, but for the most part, I could probably count the number of campaigns I have been a player in on one hand, and it would take an entire audience worth of people's hands to count the amount of campaign times I've DM'd or tried to run a new campaign. Something like whatever. Forever GM basically. So I don't even understand what playing is like. Players are weird to me. What is it like on that side of the table?
I gotcha. All right. Now, at the moment, they're saying that we have an echo, and I'm not entirely sure why that is.
Ooh, is it both of us who have the echo or just one of us? If it's me, you have to tell me, otherwise it's entrapment. Oh, well, for some reason my sound input is not where it needs to be. One moment there. I don't know if that's any better for anybody, but for some reason my sound was coming through my camera for weird. I, I
Switch back, and hopefully, if this is somebody else's fault, it's going to be really funny.
I would laugh. Let's see.
Yeah, not getting. I didn't really change anything, so I don't know what's going on there. But okay, so you're not a permanent GM. You do get to play on occasion, rare occasions, but besides that, it hasn't been a huge deal.
Yeah, playing is fine. But I way prefer being a game master or dungeon master. It's how I really got my start. And when I play, it's fun. But after a while, I just start getting that itch. I'm like, I don't. This is not the right side of the table for me. Please allow me back on this side. Excuse me, person DMing. Get out of here. Let me sit down now.
Okay, that's interesting, huh? So when you got your start gaming, was it what edition did you get started with, by the way?
3.0 Dungeons and Dragons third edition. That's when I first discovered all of this, and yeah, so played that. Then I played every single edition since, kind of just following that line, and other games. Although I didn't branch out to another game that wasn't Dungeons and Dragons until like I was in my 20s, I would guess, because
Okay,
mainly didn't know they existed.
yeah, yeah. Do you have any experience, I guess, with like like let's say, do you have any experience with, let's say, World of Darkness, or what other game types have you gotten into?
Yeah. So I mean, D&D adjacent. We got Pathfinder, of course. I've played in that. Index card RPG. I recently just tried the Alien RPG. I've been playing Zweihander
Ooh.
for a bit now. What else have I been doing? Goodness, it's oh, I played Legend of the Five Rings. We played that regularly for a while. Trying the Fantasy Flight side of things. Most of my explosion into, well, my personal explosion of trying different types of games that aren't D20 really have been in the past like 3 years, which is
Hmm.
wildly embarrassing to admit. Um, but is
We've
the
all been
truth.
there. Have you
Yeah.
tried, out of curiosity, have you tried the okay, so obviously Daggerheart has a playtest out, and there was Candela Obscura before that, and I think a bunch of other Blades in the Dark RPGs. And have you gotten a chance to playtest the MCDM RPG as of yet?
Oh, yes, actually, I did. Tom from D20 Plays invited me onto his show to play with him and a number of other people. I got to play in a one shot of the MCDM RPG. That was a fun time. Actually, I really enjoyed it. So yeah, I got a chance to play that. I haven't been able to play Daggerheart or Candle Obscura, although I own Candle Obscura. I just haven't played it. But yeah, no, the MCDM one, I did get to try that and I enjoyed it. What little brief time we played, but
All right, that sounds like a ton of fun.
have you
Huh.
have you gotten a chance to try it yet?
No, I haven't. I really want to.
It's
I'm
oh
really,
yeah, no,
really
good
desperate
time.
to
Well,
get in
shoot.
there.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Now I feel like I'm bragging.
No, I mean you should brag because it makes me, for one thing, it makes me want to get in there faster at like ASAP. Because now additional things are changing, and I feel like I'm getting. The more I feel like I'm going to get left behind, the more urgency I have trying to get inside.
That's why you got to do like I do and just start behind. Just go. You know what? Never mind. I'll just wait till somebody asks me, and then just let the surprise rain down upon me. It makes you feel. It's the beautiful part is that when it happens like that, your enthusiasm is very genuine because you're just happy to be in the room.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, let's see here. David Kulski said, "FNGM, your voice sounds fine." It was his that was a little echoey. First time here, I thought it was an intentional effect. Maybe. I think basically what happened was I opened up a YouTube window briefly, and it started going a little crazy, which is also what happened to the Foundry server. Now, I've sent you your password and I've sent you your login and the link, so go ahead and click on that. I've sent that over Twitter. The way
I'm
that
opening that now.
Perfect. Perfect. So
Oh no,
the
where'd it
way
go?
this is going to work, those of you who did not watch it beforehand, as a reminder to everybody, the discussion dungeon is where we're going to use the same map as last time. It's just going to have different encounters. The discussion dungeon is where our guest will move their character throughout the dungeon and determine which way they want to go and such, and each room has a topic of discussion that I've selected beforehand. Every 10 minutes, we will have a running clock, and this one will probably go for about an hour, hour and a half. Uh, we will have I'm going to roll for a random encounter. I suppose the chat can urge me in some way to, I don't know, we'll figure it out at some point, how the chat may urge me to roll a random encounter sooner than that. But every 10 minutes is standard. We're going to roll for random encounter. It's a d6. If I get on a 6, regardless of whether or not I agree with our guest on a subject, I am going to fight or argue with them about it.
We're gonna fight so hard. It's gonna be beautiful.
It's going to be fantastic. So at the moment, I'm just waiting for Foundry to actually load properly because right now it's being burdened by something. I have no idea what.
I got a nice little Lunasia calendar that just popped up on it.
There you go. So it's going to take a brief moment here. What I tried doing was closing all of the doors, which worked. That's good. That is a start
Oh,
at the very least.
there's a little
And
pop-up box, and I moved it, and there I am in a room. Now I see it. Ooh.
indeed, I'm going to turn on I'm going to reset the fog of war. Yes. Excellent. And all I have done is changed up some of our tokens here and some of our other nonsense. And I added a few other things for my liking, which is good. Okay, so you can move by selecting your token. I'm going to bring this up
Oh, and so,
on.
oh, sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
So you mentioned adding in a few things to your liking. I'm like, hey man, I'm easygoing. I'm trained in improv comedy. You add whatever you want. Let's do it.
Okay, so you're going to go ahead and click on your character token over there, and then you could either drag it around or you could use WASD to move the character one thing at a time.
Ooh.
And
Okay,
then
and is
it
that?
looks to me like you have approached a door. If you click on that door, it will open before you.
Oh, okay. Hold on. I gotta zoom in because all I see is a tiny, teeny box that I did not understand. Um,
Okay, yeah, so if you go in closer, you will be able to, you'll have an easier time looking at it, I believe.
how do I zoom in? Oh goodness. Fun
It should
fact, I
just be
worked at.
scroll wheel.
I thought that would be it too, but I can't see a scroll wheel. That's on me, man. Yeah,
Oh,
for a guy
on
who
your mouse that is.
oh, I don't have that. Oh, that would explain it because I don't have one of
Oh,
those.
okay, are you
Oh no,
using
no, I got it.
a,
I got it. Yep.
all right, perfect, perfect. I
Do,
see
do that.
partially,
Use the little square and then pull this.
yeah.
There's the door. All right, all right. I see the door in front of me now.
All right, excellent, excellent. So if you click on that door, you'll be able to move inside.
Beautiful. Okay, I'll click on my mini, my little me, slightly off kilter, which is absolutely perfect. All right.
In this room, you see the bodies of various RPG discussions, faceless, formless, each with a name scrawled or tattooed across their forehead, rising up from the muck and mire before sinking back down. It is a collection of dead oozes, if you will, that are cursed here to rise and fall for eternity. What is your opinion of all of the what is your experience, we'll say, of the constant near identical RPG discussions that were forced to endure nearly, it seems like every week at this point.
The constant cycle of the conversation is that what you mean? Like the
Yeah,
oh
always the same
that
conversations.
Yeah, it's like the every time, what is it? Oh, it's June, so today we're talking about whether or not we're allowed to fudge dice, and then is that the kind of thing you mean?
Yeah, the Great
Or-
Wheel.
Yeah, the Great Wheel. What are my opinions on that? It's a oh boy. Well, on one hand, it's a great way to eventually form a strong opinion, so that way you can make your name as the one waving the flag in the TTRPG sphere. But on the other hand, it's tiring. It gets real old, and you kind of wonder, why am I still here? That's mainly how I feel about it. Like, I'd
That's
like to talk
interesting.
about something.
Sorry, no,
So,
sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. We're gonna have a slight lag here because of I think
oh,
just my internet and my position in the U.S. So if I ever like cut you off or something like that, don't let me cut you off. Basically,
Oh, sure. Now, just so I understand, forgive and clarification on the question would be: are we talking about just the fact that the Great Wheel exists? What's my opinion on the fact that this phenomenon happens?
well, I mean, we could start there, but you gave a fantastic answer already. If there's a specific that you want to dive into, this is just a guideline for us to follow throughout our conversation. If there's a specific tangent that you want to go on, or a specific detail you want to harp on, for instance, that's this dungeon exists to prompt you into making those tangents or following those rabbit holes. That's what people love.
I see, I see. So I've already mentioned the fudging dice. Do we want to do it? Should we dive deeper into that?
Sure,
Since I
yeah. I
since
actually
I
watched your
actually
video on fudging today.
And it's so that video first of all, thank you for watching. That makes me feel really good. That video is an interesting video. My Because that video was a response to not really how I feel about how I personally feel at my own table. That was not me trying to say, "Hey, I love fudging dice."
Mhm.
Or anything like that. And the idea of, like, fudging monster tactics, that's just really more of, like, hey, here's just hey, let's ease you away from that. Let's find a way to ease you away from that. Um, you know, there's the opinion that I have for everybody else, and then there's the opinion I have as the dungeon master at my own table. At my own table,
Mhm.
I don't fudge dice. I have before in the past, and I have I've learned that it's just not the way I want to run things. When I finally let go of fudging dice, or when I like finally stopped doing that, took a hard stance, and I finally let go of my precious baby, right, which is the narrative that I want, or how I want it to proceed. Things did get a lot better, and I firmly agree that fudging dice can make for a worse experience. But
Mhm.
but I where I draw the line and why I make videos and why I talk about fudging dice, and I'm seemingly in support, is I am in support of whatever helps you have the most fun at your table, right? So, like, that's my concern, right? I don't care if you fudge dice at your table. Hey, if you guys fudge dice and you love it, awesome. Like, because the main point is you're sitting down, you're playing tabletop role playing games with your friends, and that is one of my favorite things to do on earth. So, heck yes,
Right.
we are on the same page. At this point, we're just arguing about the color of the orange, in my opinion. You know what I mean?
Okay, no, that does make sense. Do you ever so your priority for the most part is just on, okay, if I have it it seems like your approach is taking something that if you personally dislike it and you feel like there's a negative incentive pushing the behavior, that you can present an alternative to the behavior that bypasses the good or bad discussion.
Yeah, that's part of it. That's kind of part of what I try to do. Is it's not that I only see one side. I do try to keep both sides of any argument in mind. This doesn't mean I'm in the middle and I don't take a side eventually, but my version of what is bad for me does not have to be the same thing that's bad for you, right? And
Mhm.
I have to respect that, and I have to understand that I could, I don't want to. Well, we could spend our time arguing about this and saying, why would you do this? Or we can instead go, all right, seems like we disagree there, so let's pivot the conversation. Let's talk about something we do like, right? Now, if people want to know my opinion or like what I would do instead of fudging dice, I would suggest to anybody who is kind of stuck in that mindset of, no, but I need to fudge the dice because otherwise things will fall apart, because that's how I used to feel. I wouldn't say stop doing it. That's not helpful. I'd say, hey, take this first step, right? Try this thing, because that's how I began my weaning off of that. Like, if you'd like to join me with stopping, try this step of fudging monster tactics. If you don't, that's also cool too, man. Because the more important thing in the end is you're doing the thing, you're playing the game, you're having the fun. If that makes, am I making sense there?
No, it makes perfect sense. I do. How do you feel that works for you? Because I always get into I broke one of my rules, right? Ask the question, then give an explanation of my perspective. So I'm gonna try to reverse that here. I often feel like when I'm trying to do something, or when any of my friends are trying to make an explanation, it seems like no matter what the method is, there's somebody out there who's going to reject that method, and there's people who are going to take it, as intended, or engage with it honestly. And whether or not they agree or disagree, sometimes they again engage with it dishonestly and then agree anyways. What's your primary reaction? What do you how positive do you feel the reaction to your method is on the whole?
You know, that's a good question. I I stopped engaging with people that I felt were engaging in bad faith. That was one of the first things I did. I typically follow this rule. If I start to get an idea that you may be acting in bad faith, I will be polite. We will continue to have the conversation to an extent, but I'm gonna reserve my right to walk away if I'm starting to feel heated. But there's certain kind of I'm gonna say triggers, but that may not be the right things, like red flags that I'll see in the wording, and then eventually I just cut off all engagement once we cross the line where there's no doubt as to what they are, as to what's going on, what type of bad fit conversation. I just cut it off. So if people have a bad reaction to my videos or what my message, I generally stop seeing it because first they often people who want to have a bad reaction but they don't want to have a decent conversation about it, they'll start off with, "You're a idiot," right? They'll start off with something really rude, and that's instant. I don't care about the rest of the things you said. Goodbye, done. Like, there's no reason to continue. I will never know what your actual opinion is. Um, People are fine to not like my methods. People are fine to disagree. You ever watch the show Recess? You ever hear the show, like the cartoon
Absolutely.
Recess?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was home when I was a kid.
yeah. So there's this episode that has it's this really weird episode that is stuck in my mind for damn near 29 years or however old we were when that show came out, right? And there's this episode where TJ, the main character, kind of the main character, the kid with the hat, a new kid shows up at the school, and he's everybody's friend, so he wants to be this kid's friend. And no matter what he did, this kid just did not like him. There's like everything he tried, every other type of person he wanted to be, he tried to reinvent himself multiple times to get this one kid to like him. And the end of the result of that show was, hey man, at some point you just got to acknowledge that there's some people in this world who are just not for you and you are not for them. The end. So I stopped engaging with the people who are not for me or who I know that I am not for. And not in a, we have a difference of opinion. We can have a difference of opinion yet still be for each other.
Hmm.
But what we can't do is be horrible to one another. I feel
That's
like I
fair.
I feel
That's
like I may not have answered your question properly and may have just ran off the rails there for a second.
that's hey, that's the intended design here. Because hmm. When people do engage honestly with your behavior and your method and your style, what do you feel like the output is? Like, are you community building? Are you creating other players or other tables that you could kind of draw from? Are you trying to bridge certain divides in the RPG hobby? Because that's going to come up later. Or are you like what's I guess what's your mission statement, and how does that interact with the great wheel, the samsara of constant RPG back and forth?
My mission statement, okay, yeah. I got an answer on that one. My mission statement is we can be better to each other online. That's my mission statement. We can engage better with one another. I am not going to say we can all be friends. I am going to say, I'm not going to say we should let anybody say whatever we want and be polite to them. But I am going to say we can be better to one another. So, for instance, how this comes into play. If somebody comes at me really hard, right, and I'm like, I could feel like there's an attack here. I've got a choice. I could either cut off cut off contact and block and move on with my life and continue to be who I am as a person. Or I could instead make my posts about them. I could retweet them and say, "Hey, everybody who agrees with me, come after this guy!" Right? Show
Right.
him the lesson for daring to come after this effing GM. But that's really crappy behavior for me to do. I don't like it. It makes me feel weird, and that's the kind of behavior I hate seeing online. We can be
Mhm.
better. So my mission statement, if there is one, would be, hey, if you want to talk about tabletop RPGs, watch but you still want to kind of be a little snarky, but be a little snarky, but also be who you are as genuinely as possible. Watch what I do, and most importantly, watch what I'm doing. And I'm not retweeting that. I'm not searching through every single person who disagrees on their feeds, trying to get into their space and say, justify your opinion to me. Nope, I keep my opinion on my page for the most part. Like, I'm
Okay,
just going to keep
yeah.
it here.
So the goal here is basically it is a little bit community building, but just having standards for who is in your orbit.
Yeah.
And with an explicitly positive approach, rather than, like, for instance, my friends and I, we tend to have an explicitly negative approach to keeping our spaces a little bit more pure as far as certain behavior goes. Which has its own problems, of course. If you're more negative, if you have a negative approach to any kind of, if you have a negative purity test, right? If you have a negative, if your shibboleth is negative in nature for your approach to running games or your approach to keeping your own personal social RPG space not safe, but kind of pure in a way, or giving it, maintaining a singular ecosystem for that space, then I notice that some people can basically infiltrate, and some people will change over time. People who formally fit into your worldview will either change or infiltrate your space by copying the negative behavior and not any of the productive behavior.
Yes. Because it's the oh wait, we can act like that, but they only see that negative part and they go, oh wait, this is how we can do this, and oh no, right? Oh
Yeah.
no.
It's like it's really difficult because I love calling people names online. I think so many people in the TRPG space adopt viciously stupid positions for no reason other than spite, and it's personally enriching to me to interact with them and tear it down for the sake of advancing games because I love game design. I love working on games, right? I've been studying this since I was 13. It feels good. It's a natural part of my hobby. And then other people come in and they just go with the name calling and not any of the good game design opinions. I'm like, you've just stripped all of the art out of it. I've been rendered obsolete. I feel like a classical painter that's been upstaged temporarily by the invention of cameras. It's brutal.
that's that's first of all phenomenal. And I absolutely get that. By the way, like I there is a there is a certain rush, a certain attraction to dunking on someone who is an absolute idiot. And I'm not going to pretend like I resist that lure. I'm not. I used to be a bouncer at a bar. That was my job for the longest time. And which is funny because if you meet me in real life, you'll be like, "Oh, that frail man." It was a bouncer. Like, yes, I was, and we had to every so often we'd have to ask somebody to leave in a very physical manner. Right, there'd be a physical fight, and it started to get to the point sometimes where I realized I was kind of looking for that fight. I wanted to throw that punch. So I'm just hoping. I'm sitting there hoping. I really hope tonight, some guy's gonna come in and start acting like a jerk to the women in the bar, or start puffing out their chest. Other guys trying to start something, and then I get to jump in there and hold on. Will, are you hoping that someone comes in and makes people uncomfortable? Is that what you're hoping for right now? I'm like, oh no. Oh no, that is what I'm hoping for. Oh, this
Right.
is bad, right?
What's this is a serious. It's going to sound like a rhetorical question, but it is serious, even though it's kind of absurd. But really, what is the big problem with that? Specifically, we know that there's a problem, but what is the problem with that?
I don't know the universal answer. I do not know what the like. I couldn't answer for you why it's a problem if that's how you want to do things. For me, because it started to bleed into other things into my life. I believe very firmly that there is no such thing as the online version of you and the offline version of you, right? Like you go to a family event and somebody says, you say, "Wow, my uncle's being kind, my uncle's kind of a racist." That's where it's like, "Oh, that's just online him. He's not really like that." Like, no, but there's he even if it's a character, he created that character, right? Even if it's a persona, it came from him. And I'm not saying people can't create something outside of the bounds of themselves, but if you make this your life, it eventually, I feel like enough of you starts to bleed through to where it's like, no, that kind of is you. You wanted that
Right.
negativity out there. So my
It's a
what I
facet
think
of
the
you at the
problem,
very least, right?
yeah, and so my idea is, my thought on this is, I can't answer for you, but for me, when I put that kind of negativity out there, when I would look for that fight, I found myself looking for that fight in other places too. I would have contentious relationships with my friends, and with my family, with my wife, with my children, and
Hmm.
much like there's TTRPG bleed, there'd be bleed from internet persona and this guy, and my family deserves not that guy, right? They deserve not
Right.
that guy sitting in their living room. So that's why it's bad for me. I
Okay.
don't know. I couldn't speak for everybody else, but I will point out that it does seem like there's a lot of depression issues, a lot of loneliness issues within the tabletop RPG community, a lot of anger issues in the tabletop RPG community. And I have to wonder sometimes is if, hey, have you ever considered that maybe the way you conduct yourself on a daily basis might feed into this a bit? Like
Right.
it might be kind of connected here.
It's not like the idea that you're not actually releasing that. You're not actually venting the anger and such. What you're doing right now is feeding it.
You're reinforcing it. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Well, that's how the human. I mean, that's literally how the human mind works, right? The more you access certain parts of your brain, you create neural pathways that are much easier to access later. You tell your wife you love her, and it gets easier to tell her that you love her and feel love because you've created a neural pathway. But if you start to say, if you start to instead feed that urge to call someone an idiot, and then you start to think of people as idiots. It becomes
Yeah.
easier to think of people as idiots for me. So
No, that's
anyway,
that's a
sorry.
really good explanation. That's a really good explanation. And you're right. When you look at the tabletop industry, see now I'm kind of feeding into it now. When you or almost inviting you to feed into it now. When you look at the tabletop space, I've said before, because I don't think that the tabletop RPG space is a community because you can maintain it, unlike video games, which require a multiplayer ecology, right? Of hundreds and thousands and sometimes millions of people and some critical mass of people engaging in good faith and for the sake of fun. Tabletop RPGs allow you to take 3 to 6 people around a single table or single, maybe not even a table, a Discord call, right? And allow you to poison that space without the risk of getting permanently removed from that community. You know,
Right. Well, I think you touched on I think you just said that you don't think there's a tabletop community. That's what you just said, right?
yeah, yeah. Like the community in terms of like there are people who share the hobby, but a video game, the Helldivers community creates like a social space that is shared across individual game instances, where the tabletop
Yes.
space I feel doesn't.
Well, and it's okay. So first of all, there are too many tabletop RPGs. Not too many as in like, hey, keep making your games, guys. If you're listening to me, I'm not saying don't make your game. What I am saying is the tabletop community, in a way, reminds me a lot of the sports community in the sense that there is not a sports community. Here's what I mean. There are football fans, but there's not sport fans, right? Like if you come to me and you say, "Hey, I love watching this baseball game," I'm like, "Yeah, yeah. Did you catch this tennis game?" And you're like, why would I watch tennis, right? It's like there's not a lot of overlap other than they're sports, so they're kind of related. There's a ball there, and but they are very separate communities. And I feel like the way that tabletop RPGs has kind of gotten to at this point, we are trying to let this very big word, right? Sports is a very big word encompassing a lot of different things. Tabletop RPG community, that's too big of a word to say community with, in my opinion. There's too many people, too many different factions, too many different games, too many not shared experiences anymore.
Right. And then my complaint is kind of once you drill down to the things that are ostensibly shared, like D&D, or even a given edition of D&D, even then it's breaking down. And
Yeah.
you know, I see that as an unfortunate negative because I really wish that I could just have a tabletop RPG. I wish I could sit at a 5e table and know what the rules are, know what the classes are, know how the game has engineered itself for me to have fun and enjoy the little surprises or social accidents that are going to come out of the DM and the other people at the table. I want them to be the unknowns, right? I don't want those unknowns to kind of intrude on the shared hobby. Much like when I'm playing soccer, I want to kind of know that it would be weird if kicking a ball through the goal never scored a point, and if we started
Yes.
throwing it with our hands, that would feel bad.
NFL versus XFL, right? You go to the XFL game thinking, hey, like this should be the same. And you're like, wait, what are these rule changes? I don't understand. And then instead of enjoying, you're focusing on that, right? And you
Yeah.
thought, but there's so much overlap, we must be the same. You're not. It's
Nope.
different. And that's okay, it's different, but it's different.
Okay. All right. So I do have a question here, but we're gonna hold it for a moment. I have rolled for random encounter. I have a second random encounter here, but now we have a few seconds left. Go ahead and choose a direction to progress. You have
Well,
across this little mushroom way here. You have a door to your left and a door to your right, assuming you're facing the mushrooms.
all logic says to, take your first right. That's the maze rule. So I'm gonna go straight because I am not a logical man.
Okay.
Let's just plow right on through. I'm gonna find the BBEG as fast as possible.
Okay, which is fitting because this one is about monsters and combat. We had a recent, I'm sure, have you heard of a man named Brennan Lee Mulligan?
I have. He makes candies, right? Is that what he does? Makes candy?
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
great. Yeah, yeah, I know who that
So,
guy is. Yeah.
like all things, actual plays under this model, actual plays make your teeth fall out, which some people in my audience will probably actually appreciate and will make me personally angry. So here we have monsters combats. I had a question asking what your favorite monster is to throw at the players, and then we're going to follow that with a discussion on combat and non-combat overall. I'm going to tie in Mr. Mulligan here.
Babao demon. The demon, the Babao. Which by the way, my dog is named Babao because she's my little black dog, and that's my favorite little black monster, right? They're the demons with that kind of weird like horn thing going out of the back of their head. They're kind of like this red slime, and they're like assassin trickster things. The in the Book of Vile Darkness, and this is all a visual thing. This is why they're my favorite. In the Book of Vile Darkness, Wayne Reynolds had drawn this picture of this Babao demon as well as a Casme and a Shadow demon, whatever. But the Babao demon, the picture in the Book of Vile Darkness, third edition, was like it had this awesome pose. It looked like it was ready to just rip out of the pages, just have a ball. And for some reason, that was like that picture it inspired me to run some of my best encounters. It's a neat trickster demon. They can change what they look like. So you've got the shapeshifter. They can cause heat metal when you try to fight them hand to hand. They get acidic slime all over you. So they're a surprise for the warrior types. They've got a lot of great resistances. I cannot say enough how much I love the Babao. Also, they're kind of early to mid level, so you can use them at low level as a big threat or at high level and just throw a ton at them. They are always relevant. Babao Demon. Final answer.
Okay. All right. Wait, what was the last thing that you said?
Babao Demon, final answer.
A final answer. I thought you said by Lancer, which was
Oh,
interesting.
no. No, I by Lancer.
Completely out of left field. All right, it's this guy,
By
isn't it?
portion.
If you hover over his
I can't,
token, it will put a picture on the left side of Foundry's screen.
yeah, although that's a decent picture. That's great. And not to disparage who made that one. That's not the art that inspired me, but yes,
Mm.
that's the guy. That's the guy. That's the guy. The Babao Demon.
They do look nasty. So
They
the
are.
tie-in here for Mr. Mulligan is he recently had a quote on Twitter that, and this will I promise you, this is not going to feed into our earlier restriction on this is why somebody is so dumb, because I actually thought it was really I thought even if I thought he was wrong, I thought he was driving at something that was it be a weird way to phrase it, viciously important in tabletop RPGs. The fight for tabletop RPGs and what we're supposed to do with them. His quote was something on the order of, I'm not going to focus on the analogy here, just the fact that he doesn't need social rules in tabletop RPGs because he intuitively understands how people work and why people react the ways that they do, and why and he doesn't intuitively understand how an arrow flies through space in the midst of a heated combat and how people start fighting each other. So he's not interested in calling something a combat oriented game if the focus of the rules is on combat, because his regard is that, if I'm understanding him correctly, his regard for something being socially oriented or combat oriented is not based on the page space of the rules and what they focus on, and not even their impact on the game as a whole, because he regards his personal ability to drive the game and focus on a subject as determining whether or not something is combat oriented or not combat oriented. Do you have a
So,
sim? Sorry, go ahead.
no. Ask the question. My apologies. You
No,
ask.
no,
You
you're
ask.
fine. It's I guess, and you could take this on. You could ignore this question if you want and go on a tangent. It's totally fine. Do you have a similar view of tabletop RPGs? Do you have a what is your approach to running a game that is either going to be combat oriented or socially oriented? Do you view these as having any kind of overlap or hard lines between them? And do you have how do you personally decide whether or not a system is going to be too focused on a given thing? Yes, go.
You said the word. Okay, so here we are. I do not believe. I okay. I agree with Brennan Lee Mulligan to an extent. Even though I actually retweeted him disagreeing with him in some ways and giving my own opinion. I agree with him in that D&D is not a combat oriented game. Dot 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 at his table. Because
Hmm.
the game isn't the system. In my opinion, the game is not the system. The system is a major part of the game. It is the structure in which we hang the game on, right? But when I talk about playing a fun game at my table with my friends, we are talking not just about the specific rules we're using. We're talking about what we accomplish, what's happening in their personal stories, what's happening in the worlds, around it. There are things that the book can't cover that the
Right.
game at my table does cover. So the reason why I got excited is because you said the system, you said the word the system at the end. I'm like, yes, I think D&D is a combat oriented system. That's it is. Is it a combat oriented game? If you were to say I don't know that I agree it's a combat oriented game. I think that's really just depends on how you use the system, and that's where I agree with him on this. In that,
Right.
if the system doesn't have what you don't need, then it's a fine game for you. That's the game for your table. Great, absolutely. Use that for your game. Me personally, and I'm on record in my video about clean procedures. I did a video about clean procedure, and I
Which I
said
also
that
watched
that's what I.
today. It's really good.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, that's very near and dear to my heart subject. Clean procedures. I think D&D is missing for my game, for my table. They are missing, clean procedures for social interaction and for travel. And for or dungeon delving, and I feel that this is something that I have to look elsewhere to get. Now, I still like what D&D offers as a system, and I like their combat a lot. So instead of just moving on to an entirely different system and having to learn a whole new thing, which I'm sure would be fine, I
Mhm.
like this one. I have time investment in one, and it's not hard for me to pick up this procedure and put it into this system. But hold on, I just changed the system. Am I still playing a game? Yeah, I'm still playing Dungeons and Dragons, just with this little house rule, right?
Okay.
So does that help? Like, I
Yeah.
feel like I kind of avoided the question, but
No, I think you
I
answered it. One thing that I argue with my friends a lot about, and my friends and I argue with other people about, is we typically view the system as having primacy within the context of the game. Because we had to establish some kind of floor baseline because we were trying to improve our games and improve and decide which systems would fit best to improve our games. And we just kind of had to establish this baseline of okay, we are taking the rules as written and the outcomes that those produce in the game, and understanding that like okay, the people are going to have outcomes. The rules are not going to cover the entire game. They are going to, but the game is going to be, to the most part, determined as an output of the system, right? It's going to determine the challenges that you're facing. It's going to determine the way that people progress and the rewards that they receive to a great extent. But in that context, that remaining, it's really interesting to focus on that remaining 10 to 20% of, for instance, in Brendan Lee Mulligan's example, how does somebody run a more socially focused game in a combat oriented system? And I think that's really important because I think even Lancer is extremely combat oriented. The Lancer makes no apologies for the fact that it's you have combat and that's practically everything in the context of missions, and then you have a little bit of like downtime actions that feed into combat primarily. But they stretch a little bit, and I think that the system encourages the GM to stretch a little bit and invent, for instance, social or environmental or other game or exploration focused uh, gameplay or context for the combat oriented gameplay.
Mhm. Well, okay, so like, and so as you're speaking, like something just
Mhm.
hit me because Brinley Mulligan and crew, not all of them, but most of them, if I'm not mistaken, are all from what's the comedy
College
channel that they
humor.
used to be part of? Yeah, College Humor, right? So okay, so I was an improvisational actor for like, years of my life. Okay, and what we
Mhm.
do to prepare for that is we play games to make up social situations. That's literally like how you prepare in a lot of ways for improvisational acting. Is you play games for social stuff, right? And a lot of what they do is a lot of improv coming out the top of coming out the top of their head. This is what they did before they got on got on TV or the internet and started playing Dungeons and Dragons for all of us. And I'm sure it's a very fun AP. I haven't seen it myself, to be honest, but I know a lot of people have fun with it. But the thing is, okay, if I think about it from that context, right? If I have spent most of my professional life playing games on how to create stories and social aspects with people, I don't need a tabletop RPG to do that for me. I already have that training somewhere else. This is not needed for me. I don't need to learn two when I already have one that I can slide into any system, right? Because like that's just a game that gets drilled into you. And I just thought about that. I never really thought about that before with Brendan Lee Mulligan and them, but it's like, well, of course they don't need social mechanics because they'd look at them and they'd go, "This is clunky. Hey, do you guys want to do the other way that we know how to do this?" And it's like, yes, let's do the way we know how to do this. Done. right? We
Right.
don't need that. Done. Now, for people like me who's incredibly socially awkward, I kind of like having the rules there. I like having a structure to work within, a box to work within, so that I know what is creative. Because there's no box and nothing's creative. Everything is equidistant from the middle, right?
Right.
Yeah, and I like having my little box. I like being able to know what I can do within the box. I like knowing the rules, so that way I know, especially as a dungeon master, how to properly break them if I need to without destroying the integrity of the game.
Right. Like if you're making a decision on, let's say, I did a video on reaction roles ages ago, AD&D's reaction roles. And it was in response to a lot of people because the AD&D was kind of back in the revolving door. And the subject of, well, come on now, you should just know how the NPC, you should just be so good at role playing the NPC that you could do it on your own. It's like, yeah, everybody says that, but in every single game I approach, every single game I find myself thrust into, it's all combat and all NPCs react with the default hostile intent, probably because the DM is running all of the monsters. And if you just kind of, people don't rise to their level of experience or expectations. They sink to their level of training, and that should be your floor expectations, right? And so, if I have a chart here that tells me, no, these kobolds, this troll that the players found surrounded by blood and gore will be friendly. You will run it as friendly. That's a decision I probably would not have made. But if I just follow the game, surely there's a reason it's in here. Surely there's some gameplay I could get out of it. Um, I think that's what people were reacting to is the fact that there are because there are no gameplay mechanics encouraging it as such. Then the players are just the people running it are kind of cast to the wind, like you were saying. They have no direction.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the troll thing, but I'm just going to throw this out there. There's a difference between preparing a character and doing improv, right? When you're doing improv, things are coming at you that you aren't expecting, and you grow as an actor. You grow as a performer because you start to have to learn different styles right off the bat as fast as humanly possible, right? So the beautiful thing about like let's say reaction tables, I'm going to make a case for reaction tables, which is not something I expected to do today. But to make a case for it, if I have a troll character, right? I'm sitting behind my DM screen. I have a troll character, and that troll character is always mean and a piece of crap, right? And then
Right.
eventually, all trolls become mean and a piece of crap. And I don't grow as an actor. I don't grow as a DM because I now have stock troll personality. I just ever so slightly change the inflection in their voice so that way people think I'm playing a different character. But the reaction tables help facilitate the idea to me that no, hold on. Remember, trolls can be something different. So I roll, hey, they're friendly, and I'm like, my first reaction, I don't know about that. Actually, no, they can be friendly. They exist in this world. It's ridiculous to think that they could not make friends. This deserves to be explored,
Hmm.
right? Just like as an improv actor, if I take a example from the audience and somebody says, play a sentient blood orange, and I go, no, oh shoot, well I just ruined the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Instead, it's like,
You have
no, I'm gonna I'm
flattened
gonna
the experience. You've
I'm
said
gonna
no, you
see if
will not exceed it.
yeah, and I didn't grow. I didn't grow. I may get what I want by doing something else, but I didn't grow, and so I deserve to at least give it a shot. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. No, I love that phrasing of it. It's like you are denigrating your game by not even giving it a try. And it's not doesn't even have to conflict with the rest of the assumptions of the system. You don't have to change the troll's alignment. I give this example every single time I talk about reaction rolls. The troll has now solidified itself as an example of the benefit of reaction rolls. So maybe what I should do at some point is roll on like a random encounter chart so I can explore other monsters as part of my example for trolls and not use it for the 60th time.
Yeah, and now this, I will say this, and I'm gonna kind of contradict what I said in a way.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Here we go.
I'm gonna
Um,
roll, by the way, because we're 5 minutes over to.
oh, I'm so
Okay.
sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, you're good. You're
Well,
good.
my argument is for at least giving the reaction rules a shot. Now, I'm not going to say I would stick with it, and eventually I may may go, this may not be for me, but if nothing else, there's something valuable to be learned from it. There's something valuable to be gained. You owe yourself, you owe your game, you owe your own skills a chance to grow and expand outside of the bounds that you find yourself locked into. So that's kind of where I mean. It's like, at least try. You may not have to love it, you may not have to stick with it, but at least give it a fair shot.
Yeah, if you can't do that, then why even bother? Like talking about tabletop RPGs to begin with. Why does this person exist if they can at the very least like take something at face value and give it a shot? We have a bunch of comments here, which are excellent here. All right, let's see here. David
I don't.
Kukulski.
I can't see the comments, by the way. In case anybody who's watching, I cannot see the comments.
I'm gonna send it to him. I'm gonna send them by carrier pigeon over.
If they're
So
super
they're
mean, I
all
won't
evil.
know.
No. David Kukulski. Do you know David Kukulski?
I don't know names. I want to be super
Okay.
clear. I'm horrible with names. Like, you are Gelatinous Ruben. I know your actual human name, but you are Gelatinous Ruben here. Like, that's who
Right.
you are now. Yeah.
No, that
Yeah.
makes total sense. He came out from page 173, Book of Vile Darkness. I think it's his first
Yeah.
time here, so I think
The
he's coming
Bavau.
from one of your circles.
Oh, is he? Oh,
Yeah.
hello. I'm really bad with names. I'm so sorry. I would recognize it in type. Like, I'd see it and go, oh, I know this guy. But then I hear it and I'm like, I don't know what those words are. But then I see it and I'm like, oh, I know who that is. It's like
Right.
it's like that.
I totally understand.
Yeah.
B3K had an interesting thing here about I'm gonna switch back and forth. When we were talking earlier about like syncing, or when I said like I want to make sure that the DM can kind of like sync to a good level of training, or people do sync to their level of training in stressful situations. So I want them to sync to be to some kind of. I want to set that baseline. QFOS, no, sorry, B3K said sync to the level of training is the same point Will was making about why he wants to be nice online. Like the idea that that's your default, right? In a stressful, you have set a standard for yourself that if somebody really sticks in your crawl, that's going to be your default response.
And that was one that had to be trained. It's funny. It's funny the word training gets involved because it used to not be a nice person. It used to not be that at all. But I lost my mind. And also, there's a really heavy. Actually, as soon as that I said that, I realized there's a heavy answer to that, which is I've been. Can I say a heavy conversation? Can I make a heavy comment? Is that okay?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So I've been pretty upfront with the fact that my
Wait,
brother
don't say
died
a
a year ago.
slur. Oh,
Oh, so,
okay.
no. So I've been pretty upfront online. I've been very open about the fact that 1 year ago my brother died. My little brother.
Is that
And
Shane?
yes, and he died of suicide, and it was the worst moment of my life. I was the one who found him. Great time.
Oh, Jesus
Anyway,
Christ! I am
yeah,
so
no, it's
sorry.
real bad. But yeah, I laughed to drive off the madness. But here's the thing:
Mhm.
my brother was a very negative guy, and that was his default, and that used to be mine. And I had my own attempt at suicide years ago, and
Oh,
so sorry, that's heavy, yeah, heavy, right?
yeah, no,
This
absolutely.
yeah, and what I learned from that experience was one of the things I learned was this, like, I'm negative, and this is feeding this problem, and this is I will be here again. So I had to, among other things, therapy, medications, be like making major changes in my life. One of the things I focused on was trying to make my baseline positive and give people the benefit of the doubt, because
Mhm.
not because sometimes it's because you all deserve it, but sometimes it's because I deserve to not sit here hating people right now, and I don't want to feel that way. My brother never got over that. He was never able to make that change, and so that's when he died. That was even more solidification that, and this is the silver lining I take out of it, was that change that I made was a good change. It was a very
Mhm.
good change. And anyway, so
Life
that was really
saving.
heavy. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, that was super heavy. My apologies.
You don't have to apologize for anything. I think that's a great lesson to take away from it. Is especially after the pandemic and the before times and stuff like that, and just the way that people were socially isolated in a number of different ways. I got lucky because despite being in New Jersey, we just decided to break the law and and continue playing D&D. After I think like 2 or 3 months, we just went back to like, all right, we're gonna play D&D once a week. If somebody has COVID, or if there's somebody's displaying symptoms, or if they're in a situation where that would be bad for somebody else in their circle, obviously we're not going to play that week, or they're not going to show up. But you know, besides that, we're still going to have like social contact here, and it was life saving. You know,
Yes. Mm-hmm. Oh
establishing
no.
that like we cannot have this negative baseline. This is not going to be positive for anybody here.
You have to have positive contact with somebody. And
Mhm.
so you know what? I'm going to make sure it's everybody, as many as I can.
Right. Because if you set it as a negative baseline with everybody, then either you're always on the defense. Me personally, I am always on the defense where I have to, if I read somebody's comment, I have to say, okay, am I going to take this person seriously? Am I going to engage? Can I get something? Can I get something out of it? It has been a really useful social metric for, okay, can I farm a script out of this? Can I be like mercenary, or can I get something? It's great, man. I used to waste so much time on discords that I put years of effort into and briefly succeeded in establishing a slightly higher baseline of conversation, only to watch people choose to make it worse again out of spite. And I
I'm so
said,
sorry.
it was a great experience because I got to say, "Huh, can I get a script out of this conversation? If not, I should just go back to talking with people that I actually do like.
Yep.
Why
If,
bother
if you can't
otherwise?"
can't turn that into lemonade, then screw it. Go do something else.
Yeah, I know what these lemons. All right. So I have another thing here. Would you like to? Oh, okay. So you can stay in this room, or you can go to a different room, but it is your choice. But either way, it will result in a fight. We rolled a six
Let's
for
fight.
random encounters.
Oh, let's do it, dude. Let's do it. I'm gonna stay. Well, okay. Do we fight and then I move, or should I move to the room and then we fight?
That's your choice. Do you want to continue on this current topic, or do you want to chance whatever the next
Let's
room is?
let's chance. Let's chance. 'Cause I like where we're on this one. I don't want to fight about this one. Let's find a different. Let's just let's just see what we got. I'm
Going
going straight
straight
forward. I'm
over here.
plowing
Okay.
ahead.
I'm gonna move the bow over here. And wait, no, that wasn't my plan for this. Okay, we have a. Here we go. So you open the next door, and what you
Oh,
find is a storage area, a play acting set that has a number of different vehicles and other things scattered about. So for instance, there are witches' brooms littered across the
oh,
floor, broken and no longer usable. There are a few mechanical spider legs. There are even
oh.
prosthetic legs that have been applied to this area, and a few dormant constructs that could be ridden by somebody, for instance, who was dealing with some kind of problem. And in the very back, there is a pristine, enchanted, mechanical, combat ready wheelchair, untouched by
Ah,
time or must or any of the other degradations of disuse. So, we were talking earlier about revolving discussions in the tabletop RPG space. This is one that I personally hate and would be happy to never see come up again. So naturally, I placed it in the dungeon itself. Uh,
oh, of course.
yes, because we will not escape samsara. What is your opinion on the combat? I know that you have a more sophisticated line. You do not have to address any of the like I, how do some of my friends put this? The object level takes on this subject. How do you feel about the combat wheelchair and like the kind of discussion surrounding it?
I feel the discussion is horrifying, and I wish it would stop. Um, because it just creates some of the most annoying fights. Did I just lose you, or did your picture go away?
No, I'm still
Oh
here. I'm
boy.
turning off my camera for
Oh,
just a
okay.
moment.
Oh, okay. I was like, oh no, there's just a tiny cat.
No, don't worry.
Obviously, I wish
Keep talking because I'm going to be disappeared for just a moment
sure.
and
The
attempt
argue.
to make
I
my
wish
move.
I wish the arguments would go away. It is one of my what I believe is one of the most frustrating arguments because my opinion on the actual object itself, it peppers how I view the arguments, if that makes any sense. So the way I see it as, with the combat wheelchair is like I'm not going to say it is for my table. I'm not going to say it's not for my table. Nobody's ever brought it to my table and asked if they could use it. So I cannot definitively state. I can't definitively say I use it at my table. I don't. No one's asked, and that's fine. It's not in the characters they want to make. But there are many different tables out there with many different people who want to play the game in their way, and that's cool. Do what you want, man. And like, hey, more power to you. And there are more options for all the things you want out there. Sure, cool, great. Like there are more things on the market and more ideas out there for tabletop RPGs for all of us to continue to customize the games we want to be what our table needs them to be. Great. I don't see this as a bad thing. So when and if it's something that somebody really wants, and I know there are people out there who do seem to really want the combat wheelchair in there.
Hmm.
I don't have that same desire in terms of like I don't yearn for it in my game, but I do have my desires, and it's cool that you have your desire. So I'm gonna fight for your right to have that desire. Right, I'm there. I'm right there with you. You have the game you want. You have the fun you want. I'm right there with you. So when I see these arguments pop up, I hate them so much because I don't see. I really it's. I would love to say it's because I champion good causes. No, it's really boils down to I just want people to have fun in the way that they want to have fun. It's not hurting anybody. Why are we arguing with this? Why can't people have fun the way they want? And if
Right.
it's for sale, don't buy it. Right? If you don't like it, don't buy it. That's fine. You
You
know.
have that is a good neutral statement, which is bad because I am obligated by the rules of our dungeon to have a fight with you. But I think I picked something out. Okay, I'm going to
Okay.
say, and I wrote an article years ago on Astro Creativity about this exact response, or about this, not this exact subject, but a related one about disabilities in games. And
Sure.
my frustration, so here's my point of attack, so you have context. I'm going to argue that you can't be neutral on the subject of whether or not people should be allowed to fight for something in this game. You have to establish some kind of social norms about why something is good to introduce, why a prosthetic, let's see here, why like a prosthetic, magical prosthetic, or a ban, or magical healing, or a wheelchair, or a Pontiac can be argued for or not argued for in a tabletop RPG, right? I think you do need to set those social standards. And the reason I think this is the case is, like I said, I wrote an article about this many years ago. Somebody argued that having a deaf character could only be an asset or could only be more interesting in the context of a tabletop RPG. And this is from a person who is deaf, right? And so it would be, so obviously I have to handle this with extreme care. And that's kind of the problem, is nobody knows how to argue against this or say yes, no, good for my table, bad for my table, can't accommodate it, won't accommodate it, should accommodate it in this social space of I don't know, is my
Hmm.
argument. I think it really cripples people. Or that is a God, that is such a fucking awful way to phrase that.
I didn't catch
Fuck!
it. I did not catch that. Oh no! What have you done? Well, ableist language exists all everywhere, man. We just re-examine the word and go, okay, I'm going to mentally cross that one out of the brain.
Apologies for anybody who was listening to this without headphones or with headphones. Ha! My blood
You're
is
right,
running
buddy.
hot right now. Yeah,
Oh,
can I step in for a moment?
I'm so sorry. The no, it's sorry, I was trying to think. I had something to mention. So just so I understand fully, you're arguing you have to choose a side. Now that's what your take is. You have to choose a side.
You have
Am
to
I
be
catching
able
that?
to choose a side in different contexts. It's not quite the same thing. I
Oh,
don't.
oh, okay, yeah.
Oh, hey, there's a
Oh,
cat.
but I don't disagree with that. How do I fight that?
I think. Well, here's the thing. My impression from your initial statement is that okay, it's okay for like your individual table or your individual game. I think that there needs to be some ground rules on how we establish whether it's okay for an individual table or an individual game. And my example from the article, for instance, was well, what if somebody's really focused on stealth and a bunch of other nonsense inside the game that makes it, for instance, a deaf character, right? If they're unable to effectively communicate with the rest of the party, what do we do? What do we do? This entire group is mostly focused on heists and then combat, and there's a lot of inter-party discussion between that. How do we tell someone no, or even address whether or not it's a good idea to say no, or whether we could accommodate somebody if there are no standards for discussion and it's all, well, it's fantasy, it's magic, just do whatever you want. When fantasy and magic and sci-fi intrinsically have so many different methods of solving this problem, how do we decide which one to use if we can't talk about it?
Well, and I just thought about this for a second. Well, first of all, it reminds me of we talked about the good troll, right? And the first initial instinct for me is to say no good troll. Why would that exist? But that I owe it to myself to try it out, right? Now, I'm not going to say you owe your game to try out every single thing that comes in, but you might I do think we owe it to ourselves to before we say no, before we run out and tell the world absolutely not, we owe it to ourselves to give it a shot, to give it a try. So for instance, what would you do about that deaf character in a stealthy situation, right? Well, you try it out. You see if the players can think outside that box. The players have been existing in this little box for the longest time. They assume everybody can hear, and so they've never had to be challenged to go, what happens if you play a game with a character who can't hear? How do you describe these same things? Well, it's really frustrating for me to have to say it in this particular fashion every time. Yeah,
Right.
I bet that is very frustrating. So, can you improve upon that? Can you make it better in some way? Why don't we just use magic to fix it? Okay, well, not say that the magic doesn't exist, but is it that common? Is that popular? Let's
Something that
explore
somebody
this.
has
Let's
access
find out.
to? Yeah.
Yeah. Are you telling me a seventh level spell isn't
I-
available on every street corner?
Imagine.
Uh, oh, sorry, there's a
No,
loud beep. Is everything okay?
yeah, no, there was a loud beep. We have a roommate who doesn't know how to use the oven properly or the stove.
Hi. I, I
Let's see
am
here.
that roommate. Well,
I've been
metaphorically.
there. I've been there. Before I got on Adderall, I would just like leave pots out and completely forget about them. It was
I
frustrating.
I've only learned how to. I've worked in IT for 10 years, and I've only really learned how to turn on a camera properly in the past 6 months. So there you
That's fair.
go.
That's fair. No, it's I okay, so I recovered mentally from my earlier slip. God, that was so bad. That was the worst way I could have phrased anything.
It,
I
it happens, man.
my frustration is, but here's the thing: is I know that from the perspective of somebody who's arguing from these, and probably from my perspective as well, that's probably like that just is insensitive from the perspective of what we're talking about right now, or to somebody who is, for instance, talking about these combat wheelchairs, even if they're not personally offended by it. That's not the definition of insensitive. The
Sure.
insensitivity is where I'm not adjusting my behavior in favor of them, which no, for most people I don't, or I adjust it in specifically negative behavior because I'm trying to chase them away. Um, but that social standard of knowing that it's insensitive, and for the sake of a productive game, or actually bringing people into the game itself, is unproductive. I think is good. But ways of telling people no, we don't have any access to them, or saying yes but, for instance, or saying no but, those are kind of out of the question. So for instance, I in that article, or maybe it was a different one. No, it was a different article. It was on the subject of compensation for disabilities in D&D and D and other tabletop games versus an enhancement or an adjustment on the part of the game. And I took two examples from fantasy. One was Philippa Eilhart from The Witcher 3. She's a blind character, and she has a enchanted headband around her that, practically speaking, functionally speaking, allows her to see in her local area, right? That is a it is described as magic, but for all intents and purposes, it is a scientific means of compensating for a disability, right?
The Daredevil thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
the
he is
Marvel Daredevil. Yeah.
yeah, he has blind sense, basically out to a certain number of feet.
Right.
Contrasted with one of my favorite characters, I did remember him. Okay, Talk the Younger from the Malazan series by Steven Erikson, the only epic fantasy I've ever read. It's amazing character. Carried that series for me because I was so desperate to see what happened to him. He lost in one of the very first opening scenes of the book. They don't meet him until later. Loses an eye. And the mythical interpretation of people who lose eyes in that setting is that they are progressively gifted with visions. And so that is a mythic adjustment on the part of the game, on the part of the setting, that doesn't compensate for his problems. It adjusts his standing in relation to the setting on account of his new disability.
Okay. So
I wish
so
that we had
the
that structure. My thesis statement. I wish we had that structure for discussing disabilities in D&D.
yeah, it's that would be nice. In that sense, and giving different. Well, I just like the idea of different ways to play, but also treat it respectfully. And this isn't to say respectfully doesn't necessarily mean solemnly. And I think a lot of people hear respect, and they also hear heavy-handed solemnness, right? That's not what respect means. It doesn't have to be that
Are
way.
you
It
okay?
basically,
Are you doing okay right now? It's like, all
yeah,
right, that's not necessarily identical to respect.
right. Being respectful is, in my opinion, you go into it with the intent, with having the best intentions. You're not going out of your way to try to cause harm. And then if somebody happens to point out, hey, that might not be what you thought it was, being able to at least be willing. I'm not saying you have to immediately stop and agree with everything somebody else says. I'm saying you got to be able to, you have enough respect for the subject matter to know you're already in the weeds and could potentially step on a mine here, and be
Right.
willing to stop and take a step back and go, okay, hold on, maybe I did. This is worth evaluating, at least for a moment, right?
Yeah. And that's my frustration with the conversation writ large is and it feels weird to say because like because it sounds like, oh, can't we all just get along? And that's not what I'm arguing for. I'm just saying, like, okay, understand that the other person has a reason for why they're saying this, and just take it at face value, to or don't even take it at face value. Try to figure out like what the reason behind the reason is, so you can figure out whether you can game together or should game together at all. Right.
Yes, find out what each person is all about, and now, granted, of course, we have such scenarios where we can't do that. You're playing games at conventions and such, and
Right.
so and maybe you don't know. So if you're running that game, do your best to keep it light, so that way you can avoid these potential pratfalls, right? But it's there's a social contract, I believe, with every game table. There's a social contract, and you gotta fill each other out, and you play with who's right for you. That's one of my most important things. Play with who's right for you, and respect is going to mean different things to different people. And I feel like I'm kind of rambling, and I kind of feel like I'm giving meaningless platitudes. It's just
No,
literally
I
how I
I got you at
believe.
this point because it's hard to talk around. Let's see here. I am going to roll again because I think we passed it. Ah,
Oh, I'm
just
so sorry. We
okay.
we didn't fight very well. I'm so sorry I gave a neutral
No, that's
response. I
okay.
should have given us a better fight.
It's okay. So we're overdue. So I'll just carry this over to the next 10 minutes. Would you like to continue on this subject? Or like we could talk about what your preferred solutions are for stuff like this, and we could argue about that. Or you can go to a different room, and we will carry our fight there.
I'm going to take a different room. I'm going to go ahead and head up. I see this one right in the middle here because it still feels like I'm going further and deeper in by choosing this one ever so slightly. I head up. I see a beautiful. Should I stop in this hall or do I go to that
Yeah, I'm
door?
gonna stop you in this hall. I did this.
Oh,
I
it's a
did this
trap.
last time. Yeah, it is a
It is not
trap,
a
which I
trap.
have decided
Yeah.
at this moment because last time it was in the other. It was in the other hallway that's right next to yours. I could see the viewers can see it. You can't see it, but there's basically a functionally identical hallway right next to yours. And last time this happened to John McGowan, where he hit the teleport trap, and it will take you to a different room. Before I allow that to happen, we're going to discuss railroading on the
Okay.
subject of railroading. All right, so I'm going to let you put a perspective out on railroading, or I guess we're going to incorporate fudging dice into this because you did have a perspective on it earlier. Yeah, we'll
Sure.
incorporate this kind of distinction here, where you're talking about fudging dice, and you personally don't do this at your table, but you made exceptions for people. It's like, but you could do. I'm not going to stop you from doing this at your table. That's going to be
Yeah.
the subject of the fight. So go ahead and tell me what your perspective on railroading, or just, yeah, tell me what your perspective on railroading and other means of kind of putting rails on the narrative and telling people how to play the game in the middle of it. Like, give me your perspective on that.
This part of me wants to give you my perspective. Part of me wants to give you something we can fight about that I know I can at least maintain a position, even
You,
if I don't fully agree.
you do
Let's
both.
get
It's
we,
good
we got
radio.
we got to give the people what they want. They came here for a fight. The stance I'm going to take is railroading is perfectly fine. And you know what? In fact, there are some players who freaking prefer it, who absolutely prefer it. And I have played with these people on a number of occasions. I have watched some of my players who sit there, and if they aren't railroaded, and I'm defining railroading as in I have a storyline and I sort of start closing off paths, and if I say you can go right or left, they can go whichever direction they want, but it all somehow still morphs over here.
Right.
My stance in this fight, just so we're clear, my stance in this fight is it's perfectly fine. Some players prefer it, and it's a great tool to use. That's my stance.
Okay. I agree that there are players who are fine with it. I think those are bad players. I think that they are a
What is
drain
a
at the.
bad player?
I think that somebody who drain, or I think that bad play. We'll start there. I think bad play. We're gonna Socrates each other. So I think that bad play is stuff that drains more resources from the table than it inputs. So, and this can be done by different people, and even taking the same actions. Chilmus Valley, the module that we crowdfunded years ago, and will come out eventually.
I back that. I'm still waiting for that. That's
I
really
know.
why I'm here. That's why I'm
Yes.
here.
No. It's stream. Okay. Damn it. the I have a new co-writer for it now, who was originally one of the first freelancers that I picked up. Oh, this is going to be great! I'll teleport us to the creator pay discussion, which I already have a good. Yes, that is going to be the treasure room last time. Um, but yeah, I'll tell you about it later. The I have people in my Chilmus Valley campaign who are using the downtime system that I believe you have access to as a backer, because we need things for people to do in between sessions, because the game progresses with one-to-one time, which means that for each day that passes out of session, not during the session, out of session, one day passes in game, which was that calendar that you could see. Actually, I think it might still be on your screen. There's a bunch of little notes on there indicating where the sessions start and where certain events have happened since, so that we can manage the ridiculous number of players that I'm handling at any given one time. Some people can use the downtime action called research to either contribute to the game or take away from the game, because research produces hooks and things that people can do, quest hooks. I want to figure out how to gain an immunity to this aberration's madness inducing effects. how do I do that? I want this character to engage in research of a they want to find a specific character that's in their backstory, and they would like to lead a session focused on that. And this other person wants to engage in training and research the location of a few different magic items. Okay, perfect. Those all take work for me to acknowledge and answer inside the context of the game. So if those quest hooks never get used, and in particular, if one player just does a constant amount of downtime and never picks up on those quest hooks, that is extra work for me for literally no benefit in the game, to the detriment of other players who would have who would have downtime that produced quest hooks that they would actually pick up on. I'm actively taking out of my game. So that's an example of bad play, is the person is taking and not giving anything. So I think a bad player is somebody whose default state is not neutral, right? Not on balance neutral, taking from the game and
Okay,
not contributing.
that's fair. That's fair. I can get that.
And I think
I
that
have three.
intersects with railroading, with people who like will kind of they don't just kind of go along with like the preset path, but they explicitly try to do nothing, right? They resist doing
Oh,
anything unless you explicitly tell them to go to the next place.
okay, so I have some weird thoughts on that. And here, there are people, the people who do nothing. So in my experience, people who do nothing, or who resist, there are people who resist the call to adventure, right? The I like to call them the I dare you DM, the I dare you to make me care about this game character, player. That's terrible player behavior, right? Absolutely wretched. But then I also feel that there are players who may kind of feel like that because they seem a little lackluster, or they're not really making decisions. But we know about this type of player because we know that there are people who are just passive observers, right? Passive observers. Um, you go to a comedy club, you see, the guy, the guy or gal on the stage tells this great joke, and you're laughing. You look over, and your buddy's just like, and then you're like, "Hey, man, did you find that funny? I thought like that was really funny." They're like, "No, I did. Why aren't you laughing?" I I just I thought it was funny, right? Then you think there's
Right.
something wrong, right? But it's really just your friend's just because your friend's way of interacting is makes you feel uncomfortable doesn't mean that that's not okay for him. Now, granted, I know that that's not what you meant by players who don't act, but I
Right.
feel that sometimes between these two extremes, the quiet or the Idaria, a lot of these people kind of live somewhere with in between, and maybe sometimes I don't know. I went on. I don't. Where was I going with that tangent, man? Where was I going with that? I
I think
swear
the
I had a
idea
point.
that I think the idea that you have people who are doing things, and then you have people who are like anti doing things, but the people who are passive and kind of in the middle, um that's just kind of okay.
Oh, okay. So so how does that intersect with railroading? Would you say like these people who don't want to do anything until they are what led on by the nose, like the narrative would force them?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Like
that's
and
great
I
then.
what's up?
Railroading is great then. They're involved. They
I
have to
don't think
come
it
along.
is. I don't think it is. Okay, here's why I don't think it is. Because I do have players like this, but what I do, because I run primarily West Marches, right, and now
Oh,
Grand
love
campaigns.
West Marches. I mean, I hate him because it's not a railroad. Continue.
Right, right, exactly. Good save. So I think that there's a cat chatting in the background, um, which I love. I think that the interaction here is that okay, I run grand campaigns. We have a dungeon called the Hidden Bluff, which we have set up as a tutorial dungeon to filter players who can't play, right? To start off with, they have no mechanical knowledge of the game, and are not willing to learn or put effort into it, who are not willing to put effort into actual play, and who are not willing to interact in a positive, like pro-social fashion with their players to make up for any other deficiencies that they might have, right? So you might not know how to play, you might not really know how to you might not be super enthusiastic about the game itself, but you could be enthusiastic about the people around you and leverage that into contributing to the game, right?
Sure.
That's
Okay,
fine.
okay.
And we set up the tutorial dungeon as a space where I explicitly, because I won't do this anywhere else, where I will tell you certain things that you should be on the lookout for. Okay, you might have been trained wrong in a different game, to play wrong in a different game, or you might have been bitten by a rabid GM at some point, or you might have grown up in the OSR, right? In which case you're just can't be salvaged almost at all, ever. It's going to be a miracle if we help you out of this, because you've been trained to view failure as a good thing. But um, that's a space where I can kind of lead people by the nose, and then they make the cut by establishing that they are able to contribute in the game. Where this intersects with railroading is if you have to constantly lead people by the nose because they are just standing there, at that point they are taking something out of the game, and any effort to improve, this is the cap. Any effort to improve then disrupts the railroad itself. If somebody wants to be an active player in the context of a railroad, it then ruins the railroad itself, and now it's incompatible with a community of people who are going to play the right way. All right, that's my thesis statement.
So here, I'll say this: if you're leading somebody by the nose, right, there gets to a certain point. If you're having to lead them by the nose, that's not railroading. That's trying to convince people to just interact, and that's different. Okay, so in my opinion, right? So let's see it like this: you go to an escape room, right? And sometimes when you go to an escape room, they have the first room, and then you got to unlock it to get to the next room. When we get in that first room, you're not, screaming out, "Why can't I go to a secret third room that I want to?" You're gonna have fun in that room. You're going to interact. Nobody's saying you need to go here. Okay, actually, there is a voice saying you need to go here, but you're in
Right,
there. That's part of the fun. That's what you came here for. You want to maybe get that hint to get started and then go to town. And then when you're done with the room, however when you manage to figure it out, you go to the next one and you start it again. You have fun in that little enclosed space. And so in some ways, railroading could be looked at, yeah, as like you're leading them by the nose. They have to follow the narrative. I instead see it as like a series of rooms that are in escape rooms that they're interconnected with. Hey, your characters are now in this scene, this room. Do what you want, but if you want out of it, you got to figure out the secret, right? Then
right,
they do it. They eventually figure out the secret. They figure out the puzzle, and they move on. If I have to lead them, you have to figure out the puzzle if you want to get through. And we're, by the way, at like room number 20, scene number 20, and they're still having to be told you have to figure out the secret to get out of this room. This isn't the game for them, right?
right,
They're no longer, it's no longer the railroad that's the problem. It's either the player who like just doesn't interact with the style, or it's the DM who, for some reason thinks that all of their players are little babies, or wants people like that at their table. You know what I mean?
right.
But that's not
Selects
the
for
railroad's
bad
problem.
players at that point.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But that's or incompatible player is what I would say.
Okay, all right,
I'm
that's
a father and
fair.
I'm not allowed to. I liken it like this. I'm the GM, and these are my sweet baby players, right? There are no bad children. There are just children who have learned wrong. Children have learned wrong. There are incompatible children. I don't like those other children in my neighborhood. They're incompatible. They're also
Right.
punks, but they're incompatible. Those players, they're incompatible. They can be. Their parents love them, but their DMs love them, but they're not. They're
They shouldn't,
incompatible for
or
them.
their parents are responsible for the messed up way in which they've turned out here.
True, but it's not my job to fix it. See ya.
True, true. Yes, absolutely. Um,
Incompatible.
incompatible. Okay, so that's all fair. I understand that. Um, hmm. We got a couple seconds left here. I think
Oh, I'm so
that
sorry.
no, you're good. You're good. Again, don't apologize, or you don't have to apologize. Don't feel obligated to apologize because this is good radio. This is what people are watching for. I Yeah, no, I think I like the analogy of the escape room because I could also do it on my end where I view a true campaign, the best of gaming, as interconnected escape rooms, and people are able to strategize in some way to get from escape room to escape room. Not really relevant to your point. Focusing back on your point, if people are, yeah, they chose to go to the escape room, right? They are
Mhm.
interacting with the escape room. Each room is almost like a theme park, and there's different rides and interactions, and they know if they want to move on to the next ride or the next room or the next part of the park, then they know how to do it. But up until that point, it's not like they're just not doing anything, right? It's distinguished from people who are in the escape room trying to interact with things and then deciding to go and letting the voice know when they're ready to go to the next place versus people who walk into the room and then just stand there and need to be removed at some point before closing time. I think
Oh
that was a
yeah,
really good way of establishing the difference between people who are not quite passive, but who are there to interact with what is placed before them versus people who are just not going to interact.
yeah. Well, I also just thought of it, it's kind of like a maze too, right? You know, you go through a maze. Some people like going through the maze and figure out the puzzle of the maze. Some people just like having a walk with a theme. So when
Yeah,
they end up hitting a wall, they go, "Oh, this isn't my pleasant walk. Now I have to think about this. I just wanted a pleasant walk with a theme, which is fine. Enjoy your walk with a theme. Enjoy your railroad. That's how I kind of view it. It's like, hey, if you like that, go ahead. Sitcoms are great. I watch them, all the way through.
and we're both in agreement that people who walk into the park and then just start like sitting at the water cooler and start draining it for no apparent reason, those are a detriment.
Well, it's like the guy that you invite to well, okay, I mean it's like my name, this FNGM, right? So I got that in response to that effing, there's this effing guy, this fucking guy, that fucking guy. Excuse my language.
You're
I'm gonna
fine.
say the word. Right. So there's this
I
fucking
broke it
guy.
earlier.
Right, there you go. So there's that fucking guy, right? It's the guy that everybody hates, right? Oh, that fucking guy, right? And then there's this fucking guy. Hey, this fucking guy. When you see him, right?
Yeah,
It's like nobody wants that fucking guy, right? So if the person who goes in the park and then just to the water cooler and starts draining it, the person who comes to the table purely to be a disruptive jerk or to just throw up the roadblocks that I dare you to make me care about this scene. There is that. I don't say that there's that player. I say that there's just that person because they aren't there to play. They're not there in good faith, and we see it on the internet all the time, right? They're not there in good faith. They're
right.
at your table, real life, trying to do this. So, nah, screw them. Bye later. You're not a player. Get out of here. You're not actually a player. You're just pretending to be one to troll me right now. That was a
Right.
weird tangent. I'm so sorry.
Ooh.
What'd you
I
get?
rolled the third six in a row. Are you ready?
Let's do it. Let's do
So
it.
I got to improvise. All right. Would you like to stick in this room, or would you like to leap into the teleport trap that has now caught your leg?
I want to leap into the teleport trap. I'm all about let's keep going, keep going.
All right. Apparently, if I hold Alt, you will just appear immediately in this room. Aha!
Ooh,
You find
look at
yourself
all that money.
surrounded by treasure on all sides. But you see arcane sigils have been drawn around, little skulls have been crafted in arcane languages long forgotten, hovering above each chest, indicating creators. Just so, but ethereal and transparent in nature and connected by lines threaded throughout the air. You are warned not to touch the money pile by the souls of freelancers and creators alike, failed Kickstarters, and things that have not been done on time. You even see the outline, not the skull, the outline of a slime with a cowboy hat, telling you not to telling you to look before you take from the forbidden money jar. What is your opinion of Kickstarters that are not going to be what's your opinion of Kickstarters that don't fund and creators who don't get paid or creators who really don't deserve to get paid to begin with? And how do
Mm,
you distinguish the two?
okay. If so, how do I feel about Kickstarters that don't fund? Kickstarters that don't fund, right? That sucks. Sorry to hear that. You tried to binge this venture, it didn't quite work out. Good luck next time. That's how I feel about it. Like, oh, this is disappointing. You took your shot, it didn't work. But luckily, maybe you'll have another one. You'll learn something from it. That's how I feel about Kickstarters that don't fund. Like, that's how businesses work, right? One in 10 businesses that are started fail, or 9 out of 10 businesses that are started fail, right? It's like that's normal. Things don't work out when you try to do your own venture. Okay, what do I feel about creators not being paid? Oh, that's a very different thing. It depends, right? So there's a
Oh, I
creator
was muted. That's a good answer.
a creator who starts their own venture, do they deserve to be paid? No, nobody owes you their business, right? Nobody has to buy your book. But if I come to you as a creator and I say, hey, I want you to come work for me to build something, you deserve to be paid for that. You deserve to be paid fairly for that. 100%. There's no question about that in my mind.
All right.
Is this a fight encounter, by the way? Am
This
I
is a fight
forcing you to
encounter.
argue? Oh, so I might be forcing you to.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
I
that's
love it.
okay. I might be. Hmm.
Creators who don't deserve to be paid? None. They don't exist. Well, in the bounds that I have created, right? They
Right.
don't deserve to be paid. Again, you don't deserve to be paid if you start your own venture. Nobody
Start
owes
your
you. I
own
mean, you deserve to be
venture.
paid, but nobody owes you, right?
If you say
But if
come
you
work
are,
for me, then okay, then you do deserve to be paid. Okay, no,
yeah,
I can fight this. I had so at the beginning of Chilmus Valley, I had and I'm not going to name anybody specific here. I'll be very careful around this. But basically, the top contributors, there was one of the top contributors. I actually paid extra because she was wonderful. I will name her Sophia Ajaban. She is currently running a she's a sensitivity consultant. She's a designer. She's a very prolific freelancer. She has been recording a Vampire the Masquerade series, Dubai by Night, which looks fantastic. I've been getting into World of Darkness recently, or just reading up on it. I think it's fun, fascinating. She's a major advocate for folks introducing tabletop RPGs to the Middle East and North Africa region. She's
yeah.
fantastic and uh, brilliant. I was happy to have her on because I was confident that there was at least one person on the project who was way smarter than me. Right? That is high praise. That is not something I give out often. Then there were other freelancers. And there were other people who were supposed to be top contributors who ended up taking large chunks of the money and not producing a, a comparable output. And then there were some people who I ended up paying basically as a means because I didn't want a fight with them, basically telling them to piss off. Like, okay, I will pay you for what you've just provided here, so that you don't write anything else. I am paying you to get rid of you. Right? It's like a relationship with a prostitute. The
As a
money is to
tramp,
prevent a relationship.
as a tramp myself, I'm very offended by no, my last name is Tramp, so I like to make jokes about being a prostitute. Anyway,
Oh,
let's
it's
move on
actually
from
true.
that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, no, that is my human name. My parents named me Will Tramp. I have had the cruelest life. I don't want to talk about it.
I brutal, absolutely brutal. But yeah, so
Okay.
my position is I shouldn't have paid that person. That person was a that person plagiarized. They had arguments for why they weren't a plagiarist. I discovered that they were a plagiarist when somebody else who was also plagiarizing and didn't have this relationship with it because once was enough for me. But I noticed that these two stat blocks that they produced were very similar. A lot of the same icons and abilities came up for these stat blocks. I said, okay, well, because they started off not giving me anything interesting or mechanical, and then it was just like really poorly written fan fiction. And
Mhm.
I said, all right, well, let's start with like the mechanics of the character, and then we'll kind of derive some fiction from that. And multiple people came out with like extremely similar stat blocks. I found out that they were taking mechanics from the OGL and porting them to these characters, which is a problem for reasons I'm sure you can understand.
No, I
Even
get
if
that.
I'm
Yeah,
okay with plagiarism, then I certainly don't want to pay somebody else to do plagiarism for me. If
do that
I'm,
myself.
yeah, if I was okay, this wasn't under the OGL. None of my projects have been under the OGL because I was waiting for what happened in 2023 to happen. It finally paid off. Thank you, the angry GM, for your salient, explicit legal advice. He is my lawyer. No, he had an interesting article on the
He's
subject.
actually the first person I ever really started following on anything. Like I love his. I actually do really enjoy his I'm not gonna say I love his shtick all the time, but I enjoy him. He seems like a nice guy. We've talked a couple times, and I do actually enjoy the advice he has. If you can weed through the shtick, but that's okay. That's
Yeah,
okay. That's
no,
his
I
thing.
think he's awesome.
Yeah. Anyway, back
It
to the
trained
topic
me
at
for
hand.
my current crop of friends, where like you first clash swords and then you figure
I'm
out.
I'm starting to see some Venn diagram stuff here now, right? I see what you mean.
Yeah,
I see what you mean.
he walked so we could run. He, which is so pretentious for me to say out loud. But yeah, so this person, if I was okay with plagiarism, and I certainly wouldn't pay somebody else to do it.
So,
But
well,
if 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 I even if I didn't consider just taking from the OGL plagiarism, I know for a fact that folks like you who paid me to produce a module, the mechanics to run that module properly, right, which is now turned into a 5.5 and horrific scope load, and the monsters that were raised in the fact as a stretch goal, they are not interested in something from the OGL. They're interested in something new. They paid for monsters so that they could have something new, was my argument at the time.
I see what you mean. I see what you mean. My apologies. I
Yeah.
was saying no, they aren't. No, hold on. No, you're right. You're right. You're right. I was misunderstanding the point.
Yeah, so and
Okay.
certainly not something as generic as the mechanics that they decided to copy. So I was like, okay, I'm going to pay you some amount of money and then get away from me. And at
Right.
that, since
Smart.
then, I have really strict standards about creator pay, where I'm like, no, I'm not
Mhm.
paying you 20 cents a word to start out. No, I'm not even going to come close to that. I don't think that any indie creator do not start at a high rate at all. Start at 5 cents a word, as low as you could possibly go, and then you could change your payment structure to reflect good behavior, good designers, or reward people who otherwise contribute to the success of your project. Because at this point, I'll cap it off with this. At this point, I think that people who say start off with like industry standard rates of like 15 cents a word or 20 cents a word are trying to knock out their competition.
Agreed. No, I do see that point. Here's what when we were fighting on this, my apologies, we're fighting on this.
Right.
So, okay, here's what I have a number of things to say about this actually. Um, that can work for a fight. What do I want to say first? What do I want to say first? First of all, why are you hiring people who you don't know how they work?
Yeah.
Why are you bringing them onto a project? And by the way, also I realize the danger of you choose. We're now talking about a project personal to you, so I'm
No, it's not
arguing the
dangerous at
point.
all. I hate.
Yeah.
I've talked about it publicly. I hate the fact that this is still affecting me and still hanging over my head. I wish it had. I wish it was off my plate so I could just like go start making modules for Pathfinder Second Edition and stuff like that. It's a
I'll let
serious burden to me.
I'll let you know as a backer of that. I have never I noticed for a while I wasn't coming on. And this is a personal thing, just to say to you as a backer and as someone
Mhm.
who I backed it because of you. I didn't back it because I backed it because I wanted to see you. I wanted to see you do something. And what I'm hearing now is you're learning a lot about the process, and
Oh yeah,
it's like, hey, worth it. I knew when we go on Kickstarter, we backed that. When we backed that thing, we knew that it may all go to hell. It tells us that right off the bat. It may all go to hell, right?
right.
So anybody who's angry about this, that's like, okay, clearly you don't understand how this works. That's why I've never given a negative comment to you about it, is because like I get it. This is a lot. Sorry, you'll never hear me complain. If I get it before I die, cool, man. If I don't, hey, at least you got to learn something with that. And the worst I lost was like what, $12? It was like $12 or something. It wasn't that
It was $5
expensive.
for the PDF, and now we've released like 300 pages.
I don't read PDFs, so to me it doesn't exist. Actually,
Oh,
so
okay, that's
I
completely
have it
fair,
all. I
actually.
just don't read PDFs, so I'm like, to me it doesn't exist, but I know it does. I know it does. I know it does exist. Anyway, my point is that it's like, oh, what, like, I don't know, man. I wouldn't be too hard on yourself, but I also understand having to hang over your head. Okay, so back to this though. Let's go ahead and go back to it. So when I say this, please don't take this as you in your project. I'm speaking to you, a Kickstarter person with a nameless face, right?
Right.
Um, why are you hiring people you don't know who to work with, you don't know how to work with? You are right in terms of like, and I will say this, why not pay them 12 cents an hour? Why would you go all the way down to 5? Why not pay them 12 cents? I'm not saying 15 and 20, but 12, which is a pretty reasonable rate. But you don't give them 20,000 words, you give them a couple of hundred words and then see if they like it
Mhm.
and say, hey, you know what? I like this. Now I'm willing to give you this amount and give you more because I still need more. Give them small chunks such that you are willing, or, you give them small chunks so that, hold on. I'm not going to tell you how to run your business. What I am going to say is, when people say things like this writer turned out to be terrible and the project didn't, like, why'd you work somebody you didn't know? Why'd you give them that much responsibility? Why
Right.
would you do that? Hey, somebody comes into my house, I've never met them before, right? And they're like, and they're gonna play a game with me. They're like, hey, I'm gonna go hang out upstairs for a while. I'm like, oh, where my kids sleep, we're playing in the basement. I'm gonna go upstairs with them. It's not that they're a bad person, but I don't know them yet. And we're gonna get
Right.
to know each other before I start giving them that trust, that piece of my creation baby. And if you give out too much of that to people and they screw it up, buyer beware, my dude. But you gotta make sure you protect yourself by not giving too much of your baby to them, right? Give just enough where you can
Right.
still fix it, right? If you need to. And I think that that's a problem that we see a lot in the space right now. Is we the Gabe Hicks debacle right now. Like, I'm not talking about his relationship. I'm not talking about how he treated people in the industry.
Which you're
All of
endorsing
which,
right now,
oh,
implicitly.
yeah, I am not. They're all terrible. But one other that's kind of come out is
I
that
don't
he
know
doesn't.
anything about it except he's just a very handsome man. I don't
Or is he,
know.
is he, sorry, I think my brain suddenly shut down. Is he him or he whatever? Gabe Hicks. I'm just gonna call him
Yes,
Gabe
yeah.
Hicks. I forgot the pronouns. I'm gonna.
He's doing the Will cosplay. He's the fellow who does the Will cosplay.
Yeah. Gabe, he's in one of the other things that doesn't get talked about much, that he's kind of in trouble, that they are kind of that Gabe is in trouble about now. I'm forgetting his pronouns, so I'm starting to panic about that.
Right. I think
It's
I
Gabe.
think his co-host does, or Gabe's co-host has the alternate.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Critical Bard, I believe, or is about to start a project with Critical Bard. We're not talking about Critical Bard. We're talking about Gabe.
Right.
So Gabe has been shown to not do his part on projects. Right. Gabe has been shown that he is not doing his part on projects, and this is kind of a thing that's
Did you
happening.
see that thing about 65,000 words versus 5,000?
Yes. I did. And
Ooh, I had a really interesting reaction to that. I always feel like I have to switch positions. Crap. All right, go ahead. Go ahead.
so people seem surprised by this, right? Like, wait a second, how could this happen? Well, first of all, how could this happen? Because somebody got into bed with him, professional bed with him. Somebody got into professional bed with him, didn't know what was going on, and then ended
I'm
up
glad
having
that
to take most of the
you've now
work.
had a slip up similar to mine earlier, the discussion about the combat wheelchair. That's
Sure. And people are. I think Matt Colville said something about this. Like, people want to hire these influencers and such, and I'm not going to pretend like I'm not trying to be an influencer in some way. But I don't want people to hire me based on that. I want people to hire me because they read my writing and they like it. Do not
right.
hire me just because you think I'll bring a name to it, because let me tell you, I won't. Nobody knows who I am. But this is what happened. This is what happened with, like, Gabe, with Gabe Hicks. I feel is that people hire Gabe because they're like, "Hey, big name, this will help," and then they're like, "Wait a second, this work that's not influencing isn't what we wanted." Yeah, because they're an influencer and this is a writer. If you're hiring them because they're influence work and you're not getting the same quality in the writing, that's a bad business decision. I'm not
Yeah.
saying don't hire Gabe. I'm saying look at Gabe's writing and hire Gabe for the writing, and then either that or accept that if you make the decision that you may have to front a bunch of the work. I'm not saying you hired influencers. I'm saying whoever. I'm saying that people don't get into bed professionally with people if you don't trust them, and if you need to build that trust, start small. You
Right.
know?
Okay.
Yeah. No, you
I
don't.
will agree completely with the caveat that I think the way that you start small is with low upfront costs and conditional rewards or conditional bonuses. The way I've done that before is like, okay, I don't know this person. I don't think that they. I'm starting small because well, for a number of reasons. Like, I suspect there's some kind of weird blacklist out there that I'm on, and I'm not sure about it. That sounds weird. I understand how weird that is to say publicly.
I'm not allowed to tell you about the blacklist.
Okay, wait. The is that a red dot on your forehead?
Oh my gosh, it is. No, it's a reflection of the light.
I got you.
Coming on
No.
weird. Yeah. Is there a sniper in this room about to shoot me? Oh no!
If he's in the room, it's really well. That's the problem. Is if he's in the room, somebody clearly hired him without knowing their prior work. So that's kind of the problem that I run into is like, okay, do like, okay, this is going to be 8 cents a word, but if the Kickstarter is successful, we will do 10 cents a word, an additional 10 cents a word. Right? So if the Kickstarter is successful, your work on this project will be rewarded with, and with success clearly defined, you will get an additional 10 cents a word for XYZ. And I do that with unknown freelancers because I think that's a perfectly accurate cost or perfectly accurate description of the risk I am taking with that person and the actual value that they are likely to provide to start off with, because there are so many people, there's a minimum cost associated with any kind of mechanics that you write. That person produced one stat block that I couldn't use and I ended up paying them $150. That's big for a Kickstarter that raised $5,000, right, when you
It
consider
is.
how
It
many there
is.
are. So, and these vultures approach any opportunity that they can to suck money out of it as soon as possible. So, I think that to help people mitigate the risk, I think this has to be the standard. No, the understanding is that if you're untested, if you're talking about people who've worked for Wizards of the Coast, fine. I can't afford them. That's okay. I can't afford to pay people who work for MCDM, and that's good. They shouldn't have to lower them. They should be. I shouldn't even approach them with an insulting offer. Frankly, I think that's a social faux pas, if you will.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, my friend. But I see your point.
Right. So my opinion at this point is like, no, you should have, if you're, especially if you're like an indie creator and if you're working with people who are untested or unproven, you have to have either some, you have to have some filtering mechanisms in there. And I just think if you have a low budget, that filtering mechanism has to be cost. With the understanding that if you only offer low upfront um, pay per word, then you are actually, at that point, I think you're actually more likely to receive bad writers, but you are more protected from bad writers. So if you're in my circumstance where you're surrounded by bad writers and you will be lucky to pick up two or three who are decent or even amazing, like the current co-writer I have, he's amazing. I don't know why he's not more popular, except for the fact that he doesn't have as many credits on his name. So I'm like, yeah, I'm absolutely going to give you more money at the end of this. I think that's what people should do, and I think that there needs to be, because I am so sick of the what is rank predation in the tabletop RPG industry from people who cannot write and just soak up little bits of money, soak up grocery money in little bits and pieces and drain every project dry.
So, okay, now I'm going to throw this out there real quick. Personally, do you have contracts with these people?
I do have, yeah, written agreements, contracts with them
Okay, so
now.
because a lot. Well, and okay. So first of all, you
Yeah,
start with the contract. Actually, that's what you start with, right? And this is how a lot of how a lot of people end up getting jobs that they shouldn't have. A lot of creators end up getting jobs that they shouldn't have. Just because you say you're a creator doesn't mean you're a creator. You have to create things, right? So, like in talking about that plagiarism, people who just kept plagiarizing stuff. In my opinion, they're not creators. They're plagiarizers. They aren't creating anything. They're just taking somebody else's thing. So now it's that's a fool me once sort of situation. They if you didn't have a contract with them before and you had to pay them to go away, that's a fool you once situation. And it's like, you're right,
yeah.
that sucks. You had to pay them to get rid of them, but now you know contract first with these people, right?
Oh yeah,
Now you know, yeah. So now you and it sucks that you learned an expensive lesson, but I believe contract first. You have to have a contract in there. You have to have a contract that be able to that can protect them by the contract has to be able to protect both sides. It's for both people. So there should be a contract for if they do something that you believe is grievously unjust, they aren't actually writing things. then there should be a clause in the contract that you can, you do regular check-ins. You're able to check. Do you know? I don't know what you do for a day job. Do you have a day job that you
I
do?
do now have a day job, thank God.
Not and not to ask personal business, but I don't. Do you know much about project management?
Yes, yes. So
Waterfalls.
I was an assistant project manager before this job, and now
Yeah.
I am on a manager at my current job. I am on a manager fast track.
Okay, right. So I'm assuming you're familiar with like waterfall project management versus agile project management.
Yes,
Right. Yes. Okay. So I feel that problems that you're running into fall under waterfall management styles. It's very similar, right? Where you give them money, you say do this work, you wait till the end, you get it, and you're like, this is absolute dog shit, and it's too late to fix it because we had a deadline. Right. So there's a
right.
reason why the agile method was created was for this exact problem. So you get them in a contract and you say, hey, here's the deal. We're gonna have regular check-ins once a week. You're gonna set a schedule of check-ins, and then you expect X from them. And the contract has to state, hey, if you aren't meeting these, then you're out. You get to keep your initial down payment. You get to keep, if week one you come in and you show me this writing and I say I don't, you say I don't want that, and it keeps just not, and you give yourself you have the contract say X amount of times where it's not working out to where you say I'm gonna have to pull the
Right.
plug. You pay them for what they've done. You do. You can't just say no money for you because they gave you time. You just didn't like their writing, but you do it
Mm,
to where you can still bail on them or pull the cord and get somebody else before the project is harmed. That's why you do agile versus waterfall, right? So I feel like what's happening here is, you hire, people, they either do waterfall style or they hire these people they don't understand for too many words at once. But fun fact, what if there's just an idea? What if you hire me, right? Say you hit, what if you hire me? No, what if you hired me and you said,
right.
hey man, I need you to write 200 words to add 200 words for a stat block or something. Now what you really need is 20,000 words from somebody, right? You need 20,000 words. But you come to me, instead of saying, Will, I want you to do 20,000 words, what if you said I need 200 words and I need it by next week? And I go, cool, I show that to you. And you're like, you look at the style and you're like, okay, I kind of like this. Hey, while we're here, talk about this. Can I also would you be interested in having another job of $600? 600. We're still in that same time frame, right? You say, can you do this in
Hmm.
2 weeks? And then now I've given you 800 of those 20,000, right? And if you don't, and after that, you decide, I'm not feeling this. Okay, you paid me for 200, you paid me for 800, but then you let me go. And then you find somebody else and you've only lost that time versus this time, right?
That
Agile
is
method.
correct. Now that I've released
Yeah.
like smaller projects, like I released Seven Willows, which was initially was like a 30-page zine, and now is like a 50-page zine. That's coming out again towards the end of this month. It's coming out. The revised edition is getting a final update for like wording and formatting, and then it's going out to print. All the original backers. The my earlier objection, the objection that was cropping up in my mind was, well, the problem is like there's this massive gulf between the usability of 200 words in a stat block versus the usability of like 20,000 words, and there's this massive gulf in the middle. But at this point, I think you're right. There are targets between those two massive uh there are targets in between those two disparate ones that somebody can work on and can be trusted with. I would, and I think that your point that there needs to be stipulations, I don't agree with the stipulations, but your point that there needs to be stipulations in the contract for what counts for initial or quality or acceptable work are are necessary. Because my perspective is at this point, like, okay, if I tell you to write a monster, you should be able to I it should roll off your tongue immediately. And if I have to do a bunch of work to like get you to make a monster, quests are a little bit more difficult. Social scenarios and encounters, those are more difficult. But when it comes to like basic game elements like write a spell, write a monster, that is baseline content that if I'm hiring you as a designer, you should just be able to do. Is
Right.
is my
And
perspective.
yeah, now granted, unless you're hiring a buddy, you should be able to, you don't just hire somebody, you can look at their body of work. They should submit to you, here's a body of my work. You look at it, you have a chance to get familiarized with their style. You know if they can write a monster stat block because you didn't hire somebody who did not show you a monster stat block,
Right.
right? You know, and it's
My approach in that thing might be more like a form, like an initial, basically an application. Like, okay, go ahead and write a monster inside this thing. If it's, I'm not going to use it if I don't hire you, right? Or I might negotiate to pay you for that monster stat block, whatever it might be, at whatever premium that is. But I'm not really invested in doing that because I just want somebody who can write 50 monster stat blocks off the block and then give that person a lot of money, maybe over time. But I want to focus on that person who can just do it.
well, why? Well, here's a different, so here's the thing: is there could be the argument that you're asking for free labor in that standpoint, right? And even if you don't use it, it's already
Right.
in your head. If they create something truly unique, it's now in your head. It can never leave, and so it might actually affect the work later on, even if you didn't intend it to, because that's just how our brains
Hmm.
work, right? So instead, why not say, hey, on this application, point to your already done work. It could be something that's 10 cents on drive through RPG. It doesn't have to be big work. Point
Oh,
to work that you are proud of. I will look at it. And my paying for that little PDF is my investment in this. Or even better, hey, if you want me to hire you, why don't you send me a copy of this for free
right.
so then
Send me
I can
something that
see it.
matches these qualifications that you
Yes,
think of.
yeah, you shouldn't be going in blind, just like it's looking at their previous writing is the same thing as a job calling your previous job for a reference, right?
Yeah.
If they can't
I want I
provide
want to make
references.
it clear. I did do this with the vast everybody who had published work. I did this with them. The problem with a plagiarist is, for instance, or somebody who is bad at. We'll start with plagiarist, right? If they're plagiarist for one thing, you don't know it unless you have already seen that writing somewhere else. I didn't know about a Fey weapon telekinesis and that trait that lets them attack at range with a melee weapon, the most boring thing I could possibly imagine, for with no other effects at rank. Right, disgusting. I hated to see it on my page. I didn't know that was actual plagiarism though until I saw it. I saw somebody come up with the exact same wording, the exact same name, with absolutely no differences in between, and it turned out to be a quick Google search away. But then one step up from that, bad designers. I think that I would need to select for something that they specifically created on their own, and that's why I lean more towards a design test. And so I'm not, and so yes, it is free labor, but that labor I consider almost worthless. That's my hot take. I think creating a monster is almost worthless.
And
Oh,
it's
it's
it
a snoog, and it has the snog ability that allows it to blarg. Like
right, and
that's the lowest level of content to me.
I see your point, but here's my argument on that
Hmm?
is what if you meet the person who changes that, right? What if some actually hold on then. What if the person who's getting the job from you, who's trying to get this job from you, knows that that's a boring thing and instead tries to dazzle you and gives you something that you
Ooh,
haven't not a name you haven't seen before. I'm talking about a ability interaction you've never seen before, right? But they also ask you for too much money and you're like, well, I can't hire you. But you've already seen now this amazing idea that, and you can't let it go. You're not just going to forget it. So that's why I'm saying the free labor thing is like, you got to be kind of careful because you might get surprised and then you got to hire them, right? You got to do something.
yeah. Then I'm forced
Yeah.
into it, which is somewhat of a good problem to have because I have to hire somebody, right? And I'd
Yeah.
rather spend too much money on one person who is really productive than spend a lot of money spread out across many unproductive people. So maybe that's kind of a minimum threshold.
You pay some. Here's the way I see it is, you can pay somebody 5 cents, and that'll help. You pay somebody 5 cents and make them work up to the top. And here's the way I see it as, you're gonna lose less money, which is, but then if you pay 5 cents and kick people off because they're not fitting your standards, then you get the reputation of he pays too little and he's opinionated. You pay
Right.
20 cents, you're overpaying, you're gonna lose too much money probably. If you pay like 12 cents an hour, 10 cents a word, whatever, not an hour, sorry, a word, then you get a reputation of, hey, he pays decently, but he's opinionated. So now you only have one thing counting against you. And then you
Yeah.
just be opinion as much as you want, right? Be as opinion you want because it's your money. But you're not, but so I feel like there's a middle ground somewhere where you can pay them a decent wage. You don't have to pay them breadcrumbs, but don't give them too many words to where if you lose that money, you can't handle it. You know what I mean? You
Right.
start them small, and then when I say start them small, I'm not saying you get them increasingly larger until we get to 20,000. I figured that once you hit about 1,000 to 2,000 words, or about 1,000 words, if you're going to like their 20,000, right? If you're
Yeah.
going to like it or not. Then go ahead and say, you know what, you just did this 1,000, I love it. Give me 20,000 on this. Can you do that? Yes, great, done. Move forward. Bye.
No,
Anyway, sorry.
no, I completely agree. And I might disagree where the middle ground is, but I think that you brought
Oh,
up the most important consideration, which is what happens. I'm defending against bad actors, and not even just bad actors, but people who just like should not be designing. Right? They go on a forum once and they call something overpowered. Ooh, I'm a designer now. I don't like chairs
nope.
with poor lumbar support. Now I'm a chair designer. Right? I'm trying to avoid those people, but you have pointed out a way in which I might actually screw myself out of a positive relationship with good designers.
Yeah, and it's the you don't want to get that kind of a reputation. We could deal with choosy, right? That's just about relationship building. But
Right.
yeah, for the wrong amount of money, people won't deal with you at all. And that's no matter what reason you give, they won't deal with you, and that sucks. That would suck a lot.
Right. And
Because
I
then
completely understand because I don't want to pay, I don't want to I don't want to feed something that I can't get anything out of. And it's perfectly reasonable. The contractor on the other side should have that standard for themselves as well, proportional to the risk. So,
we hope so.
yeah, we hope so.
I
So,
keep praying. I'm not particularly religious. I just keep praying for some reason.
yeah, no, it's at this point. No, so I think you're right. I have specific qualifications for stuff like that for what I basically consider design internship. But at that point, like the person is, if the person does wow me, if I'm acting in good faith, then they've basically caught me and held me hostage with something beautiful, and now I must pay them as much as they want, right? Because they're engaged. I must negotiate with terrorists here because they've given me something beautiful. Oh, you put like a little exploration feature in the stat block because you read that our Kickstarter was exploration focused, and now there's this interesting effect that doesn't have to do anything with round by round combat. It's going to only affect people in a specific way while they're moving from place to place. That's brilliant. I wish I'd thought of it beforehand. I now must hire you. I have
ten
no other
thousand
choice.
dollars.
Yeah,
No, you put the price up front, and then you don't have to worry about that because they would know going into it.
right. And so my standard, for instance, of like, okay, we're going to do 8 cents per word. I know it's below industry standard. It's because I have negative interactions with people. And then I will allow you to negotiate for a higher starting pay based on like prior work and experience and positive referrals. That's good.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's not set in stone, but if I don't know you and I don't know anything about you and I'm just looking for proof of concept because I'm sending it out there into the ether and seeing who maybe the next designer is hidden from sight because they don't have a credit, like my current co-writer, perfect. Perfect. Then I will just give you more money later.
Yeah, you or give them, there's here's where I say you give them more money later,
Mhm.
and then I guess I'm not. I feel like I'm being a dead horse with my point here. It's like you could give them more money later, or you can adjust how much you pay based on their experience. You should
Yeah,
adjust, but you can also adjust their pay based on how many words you give them, right? So you could say
right.
I pay 10 cents an hour minimum, but but the practice is that when somebody unknown comes in, they get a very small assignment. Something you just don't want something that would be annoying for you to do, but you still could do if you have to. That's your
Yeah.
test. That's your look. I have no way to test you. Fine. I'm going to delegate this task to you for 10 cents a word. And then if you look at it and you're like,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
that's what I mean. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Right. And then because if they came to you and they're like, they have no work, you suddenly just given them a credit, then you say, okay, I didn't like this. I'm sorry. I'm not going to, you know what? This is all I need you for. Here's your money. Thanks. Have a good one. If you liked it, then you say, okay, great. I like this work. Would you mind doing another thing for me? And then they're eager because they just got their first credit. Maybe they'll do another credit too. Great. Awesome. And you're establishing a relationship. So, but you give them a little bit that you can't fix. Don't give them any more milk then you want to clean up off the floor. That's what we do with children, right? You don't give them any more milk than you
Okay.
want to sell. Yeah, that's how it is with writers you don't know, creators you don't know. Don't give them any more if you don't trust them and you don't know them. Don't give them any more than you couldn't fix yourself if you needed to with the
Right.
late night session or something.
No, I completely agree. I guess the last thing that was Sarah Tramp is in the comment section says dad
Sarah
logic coming out.
Tramp.
You
It
know
says
this
Dad.
person?
What? Or what's
Dad
the
logic
name?
coming out.
And then what's the name?
Sarah Tramp.
Tramp. That's my wife.
Okay.
Yeah, like Tramp. That's my wife. Yeah. Hi, wife.
It's your husband's been fantastic here.
Oh,
I
thank you.
guess my last comment, because we were talking a little bit over DMs about Satine Phoenix, and I remember that one of the things that was interesting about Satine Phoenix, and this is not like a crap on that person kind of way, so I'm going to drag it away. I will just say I'm going to drag it away from this specific person. That's not a commenter. That's my wife. The
Hey.
the there's certain publishers had practices of of editing word counts after the fact and then paying on that basis. And I knew from both perspectives why somebody would do that and why somebody would absolutely hate that. Because if somebody, because I on other projects that I was trying to do in order to get yank myself away from Chilmus Valley for a little bit, I had somebody who was a designer but just relentlessly just did not take every request was immediately like, well, why do I want to do this? Why should we do this? We should do something else instead. I don't
Oh
want to
my
do that. I
gosh.
want to do something else. Yeah. And eventually it was like, all right, bye. And I didn't have to worry because this person was I established in our contract from the get-go. I am paying you based off stuff that is approved. Right? I don't know you. You are not a proven designer. You have released some content on some self-published stuff on Drive Through RPG, which is not to slam anybody who's done that because that's
Hey, you're
me and
yep, you're
you.
you're a go-getter, and I'm happy to give you a shot here, but slow your roll, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And if you prove yourself, then I can work with you. But
Mhm.
if you can't, then I can't do anything. Um so I understood. It felt like a bad. Hmm, it felt like a understandable practice that was bad in practice or ineffective in practice. Antisocial by accident, if we're being charitable, and if we're being charitable, which is a big if, that had negative. That was to defend against a very real problem. But that's
The so,
that's all I have at this point.
no, that's fair. That's fair. That's fine. We have been hold
Yeah,
on
we've been
real
going for
quick.
like 2.5 hours here. Do you want to? Is that a good point to wrap up on?
Ah, yeah. I've been really enjoying talking. Just so we're clear, I'm enjoying this conversation. I completely forgot that we were on that we're live on the air. So thank you for making me feel comfortable. I've just been enjoying this convo.
That's good. That's a really good result, given that we got three not fights and then three fights right in a row. Eventually, we just went on a tear.
I feel like I agree. I if anybody at home is watching and they feel we didn't fight enough, I'm so sorry. We it was just such a good conversation. I couldn't get mad at them.
It was really good because we had to go back and forth and like we had to adopt fight positions that we were not necessarily ready for, which means
We
that
both
you
had to
are.
force each.
Yeah, no, you are a good improviser.
It's been a while. I'm a little rusty, but I was all right. I won a couple of awards, so
Yeah, yeah. All right.
awesome.
Let's hear. Plug your stuff. How
Oh
did
yeah,
you?
let me plug for a second. Yeah, I hate plugging, by the way. That actually makes me feel super uncomfortable. I got a Patreon. That's kind of cool, whatever. But that's just giving me money to do things. I got an Etsy, so that's giving me money to give you things. To paint and do things. Like I've got these terrain pieces behind me, and I sell these on my Etsy. The one thing I want to plug right now, actually, the one thing I want to give a shout out to is the D8 Summit Charity convention, which is in Dixon, Illinois, April
Ooh.
19th through 21st. 21st, I have been invited as a special guest. So what that means is that they put me on their poster, which is neat, and I'm also going to be running games there. Specifically, I'm running a game that I wrote myself called, and to think that I saw it on Ironmonger Street, which is a Planescape adventure for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. It's a goofy little romp. But I'm going to be running that game at this convention. The money that you spend to join the game, the money that you spend to go to the convention pays for overhead, and then it goes to charity. So I'm not making bucks off of this, and nobody is making big bucks of this. The people who need the money are making the bucks off of this, and so I'm really excited to go. I'm really honored that I've been invited, and I really hope that people come to Dixon, Illinois, April 19th through 21st, and come to that convention, sit down at my table, we'll have a good time, or we'll fight, not fight,
Yes. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No. That's
So
awesome. All right. I've just subbed to it. Let's see here. Submit. There we go. I wrote nothing, but I've just subscribed to it, and it is on Patreon. Then people can look at the links for TikTok and such. I have a bunch of boomers in my audience, so I don't know how many of them do TikTok. And then, obviously, folks, if you want to engage with him on Twitter, no nonsense from any of my audience. I will find where you live.
I come by and say hello either way. Although if you want to fight, I'll just block.
Yeah,
Nonsense.
no, at that point. And then let's see here. Are you to 1,000 subscribers yet?
I did. I just broke my goal, and I'm at 1,000 YouTube. I completely forgot I have a YouTube, right? I just hit 1,000 YouTube subscribers. I had 1,050. So my goal is to hit 5,000 by the end of the year. So that's my goal.
Beautiful. Let's see if we can get them up, and up. Obviously, you're free to take any clips from this that you would like, provided that the blacklist does not get you. And then anything that you want from, if you want to upload stuff to TikTok, I want to do that. I'm usually terrible about it. But I am back on the video now that things have calmed down at my day job. So now I can put effort back into this channel. So I'll be uploading stuff on Monday. We're going back to a regular upload schedule. I'd like to do 2 videos a week. And that's all I have for updates for that. Go ahead and check out William on This FNGM Games on Etsy, on Patreon. He's a fantastic minis painter, which we did not get to today, but I'm sure we'll come back to it at some point.
Terrain. I'm terrified of minis. Terrain. Miniature terrain.
He does not make his wonderful work on minis publicly available. But I will still put the pressure on. I will just tell. It's like you meet a new girl and you start introducing her as your girlfriend, right? Like the socially manipulative. It's very abusive.
Maybe they'll start to believe it too.
Exactly. This is what working in sales has done to me.
I've lived that life before. I understand.
So when are you? Yeah. So let's. So when is your appointment scheduled for? Oh, we'll just go on to the. Yeah. No, it's terrible. The 2-door style. I'm going to recommend specifically the 2-door style is an excellent video for terrain. I loved it. It's where I stole the thumbnail from this image. Do you have it there?
I have. I don't have the little piece, but this is the 2-door. So, but I showed this in the video. The little piece is across the room. Wait, was it this building or was it the 2-story? What was I showing that you put your beautiful thing
that
in?
I put the gelatinous roof over was
it was hilarious.
The 2-story castle thing.
Oh, the 2-story. No, I know exactly what you're talking about. I don't know why I keep looking at my computer as if. Oh, it's right here. What about this? This thing right here, right?
Yes.
Wasn't it this? Yeah. It's a little 3-story building right here. That yeah. Little.
Oh, that is so cool. I didn't know it opens up.
Oh yeah, and I paint, and apparently somebody was surprised that I paint the insides. Like, you paint the inside? I'm like, yeah, I paint the insides. You paint the whole thing, right?
He's a professional.
Because your players are gonna see it, and then they're gonna look at. There's you paint the outside, and people. I should do a video on that. Paint the inside. I'm gonna call it paint the inside. You paint the outside, and people go ooh, and then they wonder. I wonder if he's going to paint the inside too. If you don't, they kind of go, oh, okay, I understand why. If you do, they're like, ooh. And that's what I want. I want the ooh. That's what I want. That's what I live for. Then they don't notice that your painting is only kind of mid.
Difference
I'm
between
making
RPGs and war games, whether you paint the inside of the building.
yeah, exactly. Somebody gets it. I play D&D, so there you go.
Perfect. Oh my god. Yeah. Rest in peace, anybody who played. This would be an odd reference. Anybody who played Heavy Gear. Not a single building painted on the inside. No, this was. You were an amazing guest. You worked really well with this format, especially. So now, if I get somebody bad, now that I've been spoiled, if I get somebody bad next round, they have to understand they have two previous guests to contend with. All right, the pressure is only going to mount from here.
There you go. Well, I'm honored that you invited me. Thank you so much for having me on here, man.
It was an absolute pleasure. All right, so I'm going to close down the stream here, and then, do you have anything else that you want to say before we go?
To the people at home, or are we off that now?
To the people at home, yeah, we
Oh,
got like
hey,
another couple minutes here.
thanks for listening in. It was really great to see all of you. Also, thank you, my wife, for being into the comments. And I love you the most out of all of them. You're the most special of all the people who's watching this. But the rest of you, thank you so much for being here and supporting James here, because honestly, he's great. So keep watching these so he keeps doing these. Maybe if I'm lucky, he'll ask me to come back on this again, and then we can see if I'm still the best. Right? No, I'm
Holding the title. Going back
holding the
to yeah, we
title.
didn't
Right,
discuss
right.
kayfabe today or WWE memes.
We have more things to talk about.
We do. We do. Oh god, that was so good.
No, great honor. Thank you again. Big honor for having me, and thank you all for watching. So that's what I had to say. Yeah.
All right, thanks everybody. We're gonna close it out now. See y'all later.